Let's get this party started. I think this is our 5th meeting, and as I say for the last, I think, 4 weeks, we're going to drill down, right, Jeff? We're going to drill down. We're going to drill down. I'd like to thank everybody, this committee, for being here. Again, taking out of your precious time, because your time is precious, for being here for this very, very extremely important event, this bond that we're trying to push. Pass.
Mr. Chair, committee members, thanks. Good to see everybody. Happy belated Juneteenth, and I hope everybody survived the flooding okay. We were watching the papers on TV and thinking about you. All right. Well, you remember the team. I'm Jeff. Kara, Joey's here today. We've got some other folks back at the shop, and we have a lot of ground to cover tonight, but I think you're going to see that the bond package is beginning to come into some clarity. So I think we're going to get you some good numbers and some real concrete things to go on tonight based on the decisions you have been making. We will, I guess I'll cover this really quickly. We will go over those agendas. We'll talk about where we are and spend just a few minutes on where we are and give you some context and things that have happened since last meeting. Then we are going to get a presentation from Christina about downtown and the downtown projects. And you'll find that there's been some clarity begin to emerge about how downtown fits into this puzzle. Then we will get to drilling down, Coach, down into the real priorities.
Yes, sir.
And we'll talk about where we are on numbers, and I'll say that, you know, if we have interpreted correctly where you guys are, things are beginning to look pretty decent, kind of within striking distance. We'll also work on refining those decisions from last time and talk about what will be coming up with the open house. So our main goals tonight are really to prioritize those downtown projects, right? That's after we hear from Christina. We'll prioritize those downtown projects, and we are going to go over your previous priorities, make sure you feel good about them, refine a few of those where you're unsure, decide what we want to take to the open house is just a maybe, what we want to put in tier 1, and we'll give you some hard numbers on tax impacts. And as I said, then we'll look at open house. We have the open house coming up now in just a couple of weeks. We'll be giving a council update, and then as a reminder, we'll be back here in late July. So you're going to have a little bit of a break, some time to think about this, to talk to your peers in the community, and to digest some of what happens in the open house before we are back. So let's talk about where we are and specifically what's gone on. Since we met last, staff has really been working on analyzing a lot of projects and costs. We've been working with your financial advisor to truly try and drill down into some of those costs. You all have had reason, as one or two of you have raised, to really think a lot about flooding and drainage. So while the city has other ways to cover that, we want to bring that up tonight and see if we want to include something in the bond to address drainage. We want to talk to you more about the decision on facilities and police. We left last meeting, I think, kind of leaning one way. We got some homework from some of you that indicated an interest in doing the facility study and then doing the police station later. But I know that some of you, we sent out notices, but some of you, looks like on the software, didn't get them. So we're gonna vote on that again tonight just to make sure. We also left last meeting with some talk about some small fill-in projects, what you'll see me kind of refer to as big bang for fewer bucks here. So we want to go over those, talk about whether you want to try and squeeze some of those in. You'll get a better sense of that when you see where we are on dollars. And then, as I said, we're going to talk about this piece of the puzzle for downtown. So we've heard from several of you that yes, you've really begun to think that maybe you do kind of like the idea of a facility study. Just a reminder, the facility study would be to study all of the facilities in the city, right? to look at overall facility needs, apply some costs, and we heard a lot of folks saying, yeah, we like the police station, but maybe it comes later. Again, we want to weigh in on that to get the whole committee to talk about some of that tonight. While we're there, though, we have run that by staff, and I think your city administration is saying, hey, if that's the direction the committee goes, we feel pretty good about that. It would give us a chance to really get tighter numbers to really understand where we're going. So I think that the city is not trying to dictate to you, administration, but they think it makes some sense to go in that direction. Then we also talked a lot about the golf course, and we've heard from some of you about that as well. And really, in the interim, kind of like our last committee meeting, a lot of mixed views on the golf course. So we'll be talking some more about that, and we're going to give you several options that you could think about on the golf course. Let's talk about numbers some. We've been talking a lot through the meeting about this idea of the funnel and how there are a lot of different plans, a lot of community input beforehand that went into the parks plan, for instance. There was community input into a number of other plans that have all fed into what you've considered. We've talked about the community investment plan, the strategic plan that the city has, and that all begins to funnel down then into our work. So I just want to give you a report back on the work you all have been doing. We started with more than $1.2 billion in projects. Early on, we got that down to about $450 million by identifying other sources and other places that the city might pay for some of those. Then we came back and you all began to narrow your priorities and got that down to $350 million, then down to about $210 to $220 million at the last meeting. So we're beginning to get really in striking distance of what you've indicated you might feel comfortable with on the cost side. So tonight we'll drill down even deeper into those numbers, and we can start right now. So here's kind of where we were at the end of last meeting. $34 million in priority 1 projects for parks and trails. So those are the ones you said you were ready to go with. There's still, if you take priority 1 and 2 together, it's $72 million. But if you'll remember, there was a pretty big gap between 1 and 2. I think the issue that we had the most discussion about was the golf course, perhaps. Then with facilities and public safety, 15 to 91 million, that big number there is the police station. So 15 million right now is what's in priority 1. Infrastructure, 14 to 66, and really that spread is so big just because those road projects we were still having a lot of discussion about the road projects. So that's really almost mainly road projects and a little bit of sidewalks that you all were really strongly agreed on. Then there's downtown, and that number is sitting right now at 0 to 64, but that's not where we were last time. Last time we were still talking about a couple hundred, 150 million or so maybe on downtown. And what you're going to hear tonight is that the city's ready to come forward and recommend about 64 million dollars in projects. Some of those other projects might still get done in a complementary effort. It might be a joint effort with developers and the city downtown. So that would be really independent, but again, complementary. It doesn't really change the need, I think, in the city staff's opinion, for these particular projects that you're going to hear about tonight. So you can see we've gone really down from a big spread last time of 209 to maybe 440 to really getting down into a pretty tight working total that could make sense. The propositions are also beginning to take shape. So we've been talking now about maybe somewhere 4 to 6 propositions. We're going to break that out for you a little bit just based on what we've heard. This is not, again, to tie things down for you, but to give you some sense of that. If you were to go to 4 to 6 propositions, and with the kind of amount of money that we've heard you say you want, then it does seem to address the priorities that we saw in the community survey and that you all talked about early on in the survey we did in some of our first meetings. And it does hit your price range. Comes pretty close to the price range that you all said you would feel comfortable with. So let's talk a little bit more about that in detail. So roads and sidewalks, if you get roads, sidewalks, and possibly drainage, we just put kind of 10 million into this number for drainage. May want to do that, may want to take it out. We just needed a number to be working with.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When you say drainage, are you specifically any area? Because I saw something happen in Beaumont, and I've seen it many times because I've been here 100 years, that 4th Street underpass. Is that what we're talking about or not talking about? Because that's disturbing to me.
So I was looking to see if I don't think I see Molly in the background, but let me address it this way. We're going to talk about that later in the meeting about what drainage and is there a project. You all currently have a plan to do a certain amount of drainage every year. So your city council, your city administration is recommending to the council some ongoing drainage projects that are being paid for either out of the regular budget or out of these smaller CO bonds that we've talked about.
Yeah, but you don't have anything to do with this, but that's been like that for years, decades.
I can shed some light. City of Beaumont has multiple underpasses here, and the reason they flood, the existing pumps sometimes get overwhelmed with rain, or sometimes the pumps are out of service. So could be replacement of the pumps with either newer pumps, more efficient pump, or possibly larger pumps. The underpass, there's not much you can do, it exists. So.
Yeah, thank you, because.
This is mainly maintenance issue, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
So when you talk, and thank you for the clarification. When you talk about what's in there for drainage, we don't have a project right now. We just heard from some of you, we saw the flooding, we talked to the city staff and said, hey, while you have an ongoing plan for drainage, maybe now's the time to think about supercharging that with some immediate investment. And so we just put a number in there.
Yes.
And what we hope to hear from later tonight is kind of from your engineers and have a little discussion here about,
Okay.
do we want to stick something
Fair
in
enough.
there?
Could I say one of
Please.
kind of pertains, Arthur, I'm glad that you brought that up because we've got a line item in here, citywide sidewalk master plan, that's $5 million for a plan. When we have that kind of thing for drainage, we have people that actually need sidewalks and other things, and we're trying to, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of payback for us at this time to spend $5 million on a sidewalk study.
Let me jump in real quickly because I think that may have happened at the meeting before you came on. It may be in a line item as the plan as 5 million, but it is actually about 400,000 for the plan and about 4.5 million to jumpstart that plan and actually start building sidewalks. So great point. We've all seen plans that are crazy overpriced. The plan is only about 10% of that or less. The rest would be to put into actually building the sidewalks.
Yeah, I think that we got to show a return on investment
Absolutely.
for those things. So,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Other questions? All right. So we have a few things to do still tonight. At the end of the meeting, we'll be talking about prioritizing some of those road projects and whether or not we do want to address funds. You know, it may be that we just want to leave stuff in the maintenance budget. We want to leave it in annual budget. But we want to talk about, do we want to try and supercharge flood prevention and drainage? Then next, facilities. So there's about $15.5 million in there for facilities that would cover primarily the animal shelter and the fire station. And then there's still this big question sitting out there about 75 million. So 75 million really begins to shift those numbers, as we'll see. Right now, the numbers you're seeing really assume it's about 15 and a half, and that the 75 isn't in there. Glad to put them in. We just had to make some assumptions. So we need to think about that and what you want to do. Do you want to put the police headquarters in? Do you want to move it to tier 3? Do you want to take it to the open house? Next, again, you're going to hear a lot more about the downtown and community investment. So there's $63 to $64 million for 2 large projects you'll be hearing about, plus a smaller kind of big bang for the buck kind of project with some security cameras that might help with police. And then we'll have some decisions to be made on that. You'll see that the council is, some of you may be aware, the council's moving forward on potentially another plan with some developers where there'd be a public-private partnership. So right now, those would come off the bond. You would need to try and pay for them in the bond. Those would be worked out separately. If they go forward, it complements this work. This work complements that work, but they each stand alone. Then Parks and Rec. So as you remember, we've got a series of Parks and Rec improvements across the city that are in Tier 1. We talked about it earlier. You had a pretty big drop-off among you all down to Tier 2. But there are another 38 million or so, 38 to 40 million in Tier 2. So we left the last meeting talking about splash pads, talking about basketball courts, talking about some other things that might make an immediate impact for a smaller amount of dollars. We want to revisit, make sure everybody's still comfortable with those parks projects that are in there, and decide what to do about the golf course. And we, as I said earlier, we've got several options to present to you in one of our electronic voting exercises to kind of get a sense of where you're on the golf course. One of the things that we also need to think about a little bit is whether we want a standalone proposition. So what I've just outlined, each of those could be a proposition if you want to be. Infrastructure, which would include the sidewalks, the roads, drainage if you did it, Parks and Rec, obviously, downtown and community investment, and facilities. And then there could be a standalone proposition where you say, well, not sure about this, so we really just want to let voters decide on this issue and pull it out from anything else. For example, that could be one place. If you're undecided about the golf course, you could take it to the open house, see what people say at the open house, and potentially that could go on the ballot as a separate proposition so that other Parks and Rec programs rise or fall on their own, and the golf course rises or falls on. Not suggesting that, just trying to get you to understand what kinds of options you would have. This would be an example of then what a bond proposition could look like. Infrastructure, facilities, Parks and Rec, downtown, and some kind of standalone project. You could condense some of those. You could have more standalone if you want to break a few things out. We've said we would recommend against having too many propositions, but clearly there's some flexibility there, right? And the Attorney General won't let you group everything together because then they're afraid that cities are trying to sell a dog, you know, right, by tacking in with something that people want. So price check. So again, just to give us a place to start on that example bond package that we're talking about with the projects we've been talking about, that gets us up to about 212 to 214 million, depending on what you do with some of these smaller projects, okay? Then, and Joey, you'll have to tell me, I believe that does include, we say all tier 2, but I believe that includes the golf course because we showed there as it maybe being a standalone. So that gets you between the $10 and $15 a month that you all talked about earlier. You know, 87% of you, when we voted earlier, said that you supported $10 a month or more, and 60% of you supported $15 or so or some of you more. So there was a really strong center of gravity around that $10 to $15 number, maybe a little higher. And this, we had calculated, brings you right in between. You'll see here it says 13 to 14 cents. Would buy about 29 million in projects. And you'll see it says maybe more once phasing is factored in. So I talked to the outside financial advisor that y'all met at meeting number 2 just about 2 hours ago. He was cranking those numbers for us and got them to us too late to get into the slides, but we do have some interesting numbers. It does, as we thought, bring that number down a little bit. So we think it's right now you're sitting at between $11.25 and $11.50, somewhere in that range, to do about $212 to $214 million. So that assumes phasing. So that's the benefit we get when we say, well, we're not going to sell all the bonds at once. We're going to sell some, do those projects, but some of what we sell will be for engineering that will take a while, so you get to wait to sell that second set of bonds. You don't have to pay interest on that, so it bought us a little bit. So again, if your goal, you guys need to confirm that tonight, but if your goal is $10 to $15, you're getting into a pretty good package there with a lot of what you've said is your high priorities for right in that $11 to $12 range. So that's the good news tonight. Lots of progress. And I hope you can see we really are beginning to get out of that chaos. There's beginning to be form to the clay. I wanted to give you that to give you this background before you hear about downtown. So as you're thinking about downtown tonight, know that we're kind of in striking distance. There's lots of room for you to change your mind. There's lots of room for refinement, especially in tweaking. But in your big picture issues, we're getting pretty close to what you've said your goals are, and those numbers that we talked about include the projects that you're going to hear the city present tonight about downtown. So it doesn't mean you're obligated to those, but just know that when you talk about $11 or $12, that includes the final recommendations that you're going to hear from the city on downtown. So with that, Christina, I think you've got a presentation to bring people up to speed on this piece of the puzzle. We're just switching over for Christina's presentation, so just one second.
That's nice.
That's Kara's daughter. We can take a vote on the artwork, but I warn you, she is my goddaughter also, so be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to not waste your time. So just while she's pulling it up, inside the packet, there's some slides, and then there's a printed off document that's right behind it. Let's just look at that for a quick second.
This one.
Yeah, do y'all see it? It starts off with Civic Center Complex.
Yes.
Okay, so really cool thing. My 92-year-old grandmother is a hoarder, and she's been living in Beaumont forever. And the coolest thing ever is that she saved the actual 1975 plan for downtown in the city of Beaumont. Wow. I didn't find it in the Terrell Park Historical Library. I found it from when Debbie was cleaning out her house. But it was so interesting is that 50 years ago, we were talking about many of the exact same things that we're talking about today. 50 years ago, they phased it out. It was so much cheaper back then. The scale of investment, yes, is in there too. And so I printed off all 4 pages because I thought it was just really unique to see the Civic Center being connected to the Julia Rogers Theater, or the idea that a downtown hotel and using the Riverwalk came from 1975. So, you know, something to look at later, but really interesting stuff. Yay, we're working. Okay, great. So, thank you all for being here. I know we carry the weight of making informed strategic decisions, especially when it comes to how we invest these city resources. These decisions are really mostly about people. They're about the kind of city we want to build, not just for today, but the next generation. We're at a critical crossroads. We must plan for the future while responding to today's challenges. That's why this conversation is so important. And I promise not to waste your time. I made this presentation really short and quick. I even typed up everything to stick to it. So work with me, and then we'll be able to answer any of your questions you may have. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Christina Loki. I am a certified destination management executive and an economic development manager for the city of Beaumont. I'm including my full credentials today because I want to make it clear my background isn't just in tourism, it's in place-based economic strategy. It's about understanding how to position a city as a destination, how to drive revenue through strategic investment, and how to turn public spaces and infrastructure into long-term economic engines. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that could orchestrate how we're doing the bond today. So we will be focusing on 2 key projects: the Riverfront Park Extension and the Downtown Sports Complex. I'll start off by saying you'll see some potential renderings in these slides. They are simply conceptual examples to help visualize the opportunity and not final designs. Okay, if I need to repeat, these are not final designs. The purpose of this plan was to propose the sports complex you'll be able to hear about. And we were going to have partners from the sports facilities company who did a feasibility of the potential profit and revenue, who unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, will not be able to talk, but you'll be able to see their slides. So when their slides come up and it introduces Meet J.D. Wood, unfortunately he won't be with us today, but I'll run through it really quickly. And then finally, we'll close off with a brief overview of a broader economic strategy, highlighting why revenue-generating projects like these are so important and essential for this bond. So let's learn about our framework. So for the first time in 20 years, the City of Beaumont has adopted a formal strategic plan, and we are in a significantly better position because of it. This is not just a document, it's a shared vision that expresses the will of the council, adopted by council on behalf of the citizens. It lays the foundation for everything we do, how we invest, how we prioritize, and most importantly, how we lead. This strategic plan outlines a clear destination, a vibrant downtown and riverfront anchored by a hotel and convention center, supported by recreation and entertainment, and positioned as a premier sports tourism destination. You'll see today how economic development is not just connected in these goals, it's embedded in them. Okay. Really quickly, we're going to just show you that these are the 5 goals. I'm not going to waste your time, but I would like you to take some time looking at this as you continue to make these decisions. All of the highlighted objectives are actually not just economic development. Goal 3, a vibrant downtown and riverfront. Please pay attention to Goal 3. And remember, this was adopted by council as one of the 5 main pillars in the strategic plan, the first one we've had in over 20 years. Then finally, Goal 4, livable neighborhoods, old and new. And Goal 5, upgraded city facilities and infrastructure through investments. Okay, so as you can see, the strategic plan isn't just a guiding document, it's a declaration of intent. It defines where we're going as a city, but a vision without an execution is just a dream. That's where the CIP comes in, the Community Investment Plan. Too many, we're having fun. So the CIP is it's an execution arm of the strategic plan. It transforms high-level goals into real, visible progress. Streets paved, parks improved, public facilities built, and infrastructure modernized. It's how we turn strategy into action. And it's more than a list of projects. It's a 5-year roadmap that reflects the priorities of the council, the realities of development trends, and the discipline of long-term financial planning. In short, the strategic plan provides the vision, the CIP delivers the action. The FY 2026-2030 Community Investment Plan includes 7 major projects aimed at transforming downtown into a more connected, walkable, and thriving destination. These projects include the City Hall Courtyard and Plaza renovations, the Civic Center renovation, the Riverfront Park extension, Riverfront Walkway from City Hall Plaza, the Riverfront Pedestrian Bridge, the Downtown Sports Complex, and the Underground Power Line relocation. We're so excited about the full vision. Surprisingly, I don't think they were considering the rail or the railroad attachment that's there. And then finally, we have the 2022 plan, Vision 2035, which not only took the 2008 plan, but it actually proposed specific type of placement to allow for more people and more growth. What's really exciting about these plans, as we look through it, is the fact that they're still evolving, and they're evolving based off of the times. So first, the river. We recognize the untapped potential of its riverfront. We all have seen in all these plans that we need to activate the riverfront. It's a natural asset, and it's unique for recreation and tourism. Second, all of the plans identified a hotel, the need for a full-service hotel downtown that's echoed time and time again, but it's the one piece of the puzzle that we never quite completed. So please note that these are not new ideas, they're unfinished ones, and that's why this discussion matters so much today. But the decisions that we're talking about now, 2 separate projects, they stand on their own. These are not dependent on the hotel or any other future development downtown. These are projects that are going to draw revenue and are catalytic in moving the city forward. So as we continue to look at the downtown, we need to understand the investments that have been made here in the Lake District from the 2008 plan. We are in a brand new center that's part of that plan. We also have the event center that's located just adjacent. This is a part of the Lake District. And at some point in time, we are going to be working towards developing the Riverfront District. And the Riverfront District includes Riverfront Park, who unfortunately got rained out for opening, but is ready to be open very soon. And from that, we will develop into the connector that connects the 2 together. And it's a huge piece of the puzzle that's all coming together at this time. So let's look at Riverfront Park. I'm not sure it was the last time for many of you to be out there, but it's a jewel. And not only is it on the river, but it has been renovated through the FEMA funding. From there, we have allocated 8.25 acres from the Civic Center that the city owns. You notate the city-owned property. Initially, we went out for RFP for the hotel, And this property is adjacent to Riverfront Park. Now, the Riverfront Park extension, this is the first project you will hear today about downtown. Obviously, we know Nature's River is Beaumont's greatest natural asset, but we need to create a place built for visitors but made for residents. It transforms the riverfront into a dynamic, inclusive, and engaging space for all. Don't worry, there's pictures right after. I just want to kind of tell you that the idea behind it is that it's anchored by an interactive splash pad, children's activity center, and a modern amphitheater for live music, events, and entertainment. There also includes vendor pavilion with at least 4 storefront kiosks and decorative lighting, public restrooms, and public seating. You ready to see some renderings? Attached is just a few examples of how it could look. And remember, these are standalone projects. Here you'll see an interactive splash pad, color, engagement. At the same time, you'll see places for seating that is fully shaded. You'll also see incorporating as people. I can't stress the importance. What downtown needs the most is people, and we need to be able to create interactive spaces for them. Finally, it also includes the walkway to Riverfront Park. In this, the idea is that the landing site, which is the proposed 8.25 acres we initially showed that connects to the Civic Center, would be connected to Riverfront Park. At some point where that connection would be, there would be interactive for children or families who walk from the landing to the Riverfront Park to be able to stay engaged. I'm going to keep going unless there's any questions.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
With the consideration of a potential hotel, where's the placement for that with this particular concept?
So if you go back a couple slides, Christina, to the one more. I just want to show the site. So here you see with the dirt there, that obviously was the location of the AT&T building. With the acquisition of the AT&T property, that gives the city a lot more options in terms of placement. So whereas before that, we were limited on where we could put the hotel. So to try to answer your question, we have a lot of options. But what we're looking for in terms of Riverfront Landing is roughly where the AT&T property was. The idea, again, is to connect the riverfront more so, basically connect downtown to the riverfront more so through this extension. And you'll hear it referred to as Riverfront Landing, but it's really Riverfront Park Extension. But to answer your question, because of the additional property, we have a lot of flexibility. Right now, I can tell you the concept is to have the hotel, roughly just to the, basically between the AT&T property and the Civic Center. That would be where the hotel is currently being discussed.
Okay.
Question. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, one of my favorite topic ever. Okay, really excited about the visitor economy because many people just don't know about it and don't know how successful it is for our region. More importantly, 2024, visitor spending in Beaumont totaled $391.9 million. If you could just remember that in the back of your head, $391.9 million. That was an 8.8% increase over the previous year. This is not just a tourism stat, it's an economic signal. This number reflects real dollars spent in our hotels, restaurants, retail stores, and entertainment venues by people who don't live here but choose to visit. Why does this matter? Because the visitor economy fuels Beaumont's local economy in tangible ways. So pay attention to the graph. Visitors supported 3,100 local jobs across hospitality, food service, retail, and tourism sections. That's nearly 1 in every 15 jobs in the city. These jobs generated $85.6 million in direct earnings, putting money in the hands of local workers and business owners. Most notably, visitor activity produced $33.5 million in tax revenue, with nearly 1/3, $10.5 million, going directly to local government to help fund. So when we talk about tourism, we're not just talking about events and hotel rooms. We're talking about an economic engine, a growing visitor economy that helps us pay for roads, parks, and police officers. It means more revenue without more tax burden. The visitor economy isn't a side story. It's a central strategic strategy for growth, resilience, and reinvestment. And a huge special thanks to Freddie Willard and the entire Convention and Visitors Bureau for doing such an incredible job getting the visitors here.
Ms. Christina, the definition of visitor for those numbers, is that strictly tourism? Does that also include visitors here for the purpose of, say, like transient work, construction projects, or is that solely tourism numbers?
So these numbers are provided from the state. Anyone can look them up themselves. The definition of a tourist is outside of a 50-mile range. And typically, it's just because they don't want to include regional growth. And a lot of the data is actually centralized by IP addresses. I love data so much that your last 10 slides in this presentation is just visitor data alone. It actually identifies the age group of people who are coming here within these statistics. So for 2024, we lumped together 149,000 cellular devices that were from visitors outside of a 50-mile radius. Now, they could not stay in market longer than 7 days because at that point, it becomes unrelated data, and they don't utilize it because that's where your employees are. Like if ExxonMobil had someone here for 3 months, right? So what's really great is if you look at the last slide, you'll see all of that visitor data. You'll see how much they spend. You'll see the ages and the demographics and where they went.
So visitor equals tourist
Visitor equals tourist.
for this number. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ms. Christina. Speaking of tourism and visitors, I saw the railroad track there. How will that efficiently work with the park downtown and the railroad track running parallel to each other?
Okay, so really exciting is that if you go back to the slide about the community investment plan, the 5-year plan, we have in the downtown projects, there's 7 projects. We're only discussing 2 of those projects, but one of the projects listed there is the pedestrian bridge over the railroad. And in this rendering, it's just trying to show you a potential example of it, but we're really lucky because there is some legislation that has just been passed that could potentially allow for some of that funding.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We're with you. Oh, okay. Any other questions? We're good? We're gonna keep going. I had to put the slide in right before I show off the sports complex, just because simply this, downtown must be a destination, not a detour. And to maximize return, we have to maximize the experience, not just for visitors, but built for residents, okay? Think through that. And just to reiterate one tiny thing is that we don't need to reinvent downtown. We just need to reintroduce it. It already has so much. We have Museum Road directly across from this landing site, multiple museums within blocks of walking distance. There is a lot of rare opportunity in downtown. Okay, get excited. My favorite. So the Beaumont Sports Complex, this is a brand new idea for the community investment plan, but remember, it aligns with strategic goal within the strategic plan, objective 3, goal 1, for Beaumont to be a sports tourist destination, okay? So let me be clear, this is an economic development project. It's designed to generate direct revenue through tournaments, bookings, and concessions, and indirect revenue by drawing visitors who will spend money in our hotels, restaurants, and shops. This isn't just about recreation, it's about positioning Beaumont as the premier sports tourist destination. In it, we introduced a state-of-the-art indoor sports and event facility designed to anchor downtown tourism and generate year-round economic activity. And we're not just talking about basketball and volleyball. We're talking about pickleball, esports, gymnastics, cheerleading, baton twirling, wrestling, table tennis, Special Olympics, youth leagues, and so many more. And not just youth leagues. They have under 50, under 60, under 70, right? It's not just for the youth. So let's look at the project site boundary. Currently, directly across from us is the Beaumont Event Center. And just adjacent to that is 12 acres of the Great Lawn. In this rendering, you'll see the location of the sports complex. That includes some parking. There is some additional parking lots that the city does own. And what's really interesting is the potential for more development. Again, renderings, not the final design, but just a potential rendering of the front entry. And then we have 2 floor concepts that we're looking into. The first one is floor plan concept A, which includes 6 courts. We have the configuration here. 6 basketball courts would get 12 volleyball courts, 18 pickleball courts, and a banquet hall that would seat at least 1,500 people. Floor plan concept B includes 8 courts. We have reached out to the sports facility company. Here's you meeting JD Wood, who unfortunately isn't going to be here, but his slides are in this presentation, and I actually have his notes of exactly what he was going to say. So if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to just read his presentation. But more importantly, I'd like to show you just how 15 years of experience for JD Wood and Dan Morton, who you were going to meet. Both of them are with Sports Facilities Company. They manage multiple facilities. Some of those facilities and notable projects are listed here. And if you have a minute, look at their website. It's pretty incredible. So, Sports Facilities Company, their mission is to improve the health and economic vitality of the communities that they serve. In it, they're already serving over 3,000 communities, $15 billion in planned and funded facilities, and $25 million in annual visits to any of the facilities. Can you also hear me? I'm just going to talk louder. What's really exciting is they have over 2,500 team members and growing. This kind of shows you a little bit of their conceptual plan, how it starts, implementation, where they are in pre-design and design phases, and construction and commissioning. At this point, you have to understand that we're still at the feasibility stage, right? So we're looking at the feasibility of 6 courts versus 8 courts and the potential return of investment on each of those. So for that, you're going to see numbers for both the 6-court design and the 8-court design.
Christina, if for either this company or other companies, are there organizations that do this for profit? For example, they would build their own facility and then, rent it out rather than it being a public building?
So I will just say this. Sports Facilities Company is currently working on 14 city-owned facilities right now that have been built in the last 4 years.
So they do only in city-owned? They don't do...
Well, and that's the exciting part, is that it's not just that they only do city-owned, it's just that recently cities have started to see the uptick in what type of sports tourism travel there is. I mean, if I were to ask everyone to raise their hand if they've ever traveled for, their child's sports teams, I mean, obviously it would be a majority of people, right? So what's happened now is, and Legends in College Station is a good catalyst of it. So in 2000, when Legends was built, it happened right before COVID. And in a time where there really wasn't a lot to be able to do, Legends was still able to make money for the city. And it really helped Bryan, Texas.
And I love that notion and agree with it. I just wondered, do private companies ever build their own facilities like this and operate it as a private program such that it doesn't have to be a city facility, but we get the same tourism benefits?
Right. So what happens is that these type of facilities typically break even. They're not necessarily huge economic drivers in terms of the actual building itself. It's the indirect benefits that you're going to see in the slides. And what's so great is that we've purposely shown a low, medium, and high intensity to be able to showcase, even if we did nothing and just made it like a community benefit, this is how much it would cost us.
That's perfect. So it's not really feasible for a private company to come in and run something like this. I just wanted to test that before we took it to taxpayers. Can somebody else pay for it? Right.
The truth is that some people have, NBA basketball stars from their hometown that want to come back and do some big projects, and that does exist. But outside of that, not necessarily, because these aren't like big money makers. It's more for benefits.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll get to see these numbers. It's really cool.
One last question. With this concept, I understand this company comes in and builds the facility. Is the idea for the city to run the facility, or going to outsource that to them, or?
Awesome question. Okay, so first of all, the renderings are coming from a separate company than Sports Facilities. Sports Facility Company comes in and does the feasibility of it. If they like the location, then they too will bid on being the third-party site that manages it. And in these numbers includes their fee, as if they were. So even if they weren't the third-party company we used, obviously we're a city entity, it would go out for RFP, but at the same time, what it would have cost us is actually included in this.
Thank you.
Yeah, really excited.
Do they already like our site? Or
Oh, girl, you don't even know. I'm just so excited about this because it's right place, right time. Lake Charles has actually been a city that's been looking to do something similar, but they didn't have Ford Park like we had. And so they started first with softball and baseball fields. And Eric Zalter out of Visit Lake Charles, who manages their sports tourist destination, that he is actually a great person you could reach out to and hear more about their project. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this is the facility that they think at this point in the process is the highest and best facility that could meet the definition of success. I'm reading this for the first time. It's exciting. So the indoor facility is roughly 172,000 square feet. It has 10 basketball courts, cross-lined with 20 volleyball courts, and 30 pickleball courts. 8 courts is the minimum needed to be considered as a sports tourism asset. 10 courts makes the facility a differentiator in the market. The meeting space provided the opportunity to provide space for larger events or divisible walls for smaller events. That is key. Something really unique about Legends is that they're able to have trade shows at the same time of having basketball tournaments. So it's really unique. Because a lot of basketball tournaments are also trying to sell things so that they can create vendor booths to be able to do that at the same time. The meeting space, in addition to the courts, we have 20,000 square feet of FEC, Family Entertainment Center, which could include items such as laser tag, arcade, play climb, etc. This space will help drive revenue to the site and provide an amenity to keep people in the facility. Within the flex space, we have a kitchen and cafe seating area, which will make this facility different from your normal vending machine options like you would find in just a regular rec center, and keep people in the facility to spend money. In addition, there is 5,000 square feet of medical lease space. That's a cool idea. This space can be leased to an outside provider. This is a really strong opportunity to drive additional revenue and create community partnerships with local businesses. All in, the total building acreage equals out to roughly 3.5 acres, and with parking, it is just shy of 13 acres. And remember, we already have some parking that is included in adjacent lots. So I think you have the numbers in front of you because I know it's a little difficult to read. But if you kind of go through what each one of these different numbers are, they're actually even including requirements for mechanical, electrical, products and services, common areas, stairs, things like that. Okay, so now we're going to look at the 8-court option because I have excited to read what he has to say about this. So this is the facility that we think is the best use. Okay. And I think his notes weren't updated, so we're going to go with it like this. In the differences between the two slides, you'll be able to see not just an increase in the total acreage, but you'll also be able to see the athletic footprint of the building. One would be 94,000 square feet, and one would be 115,000 square feet. It's important to be able to showcase that because as we look at the next slide, they have costed out their opinion of cost for the 6 courts with a family entertainment center, the 8 courts without a family entertainment center, and the 8 courts with a family entertainment center. As you go through these costs, they have reduced a low, medium, and middle and high for what those initial costs would be, and they've based those costs off of the square footage that you initially saw on the previous slides. They've also included cost for the field and sports equipment, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and the soft cost for constructions and the soft cost for operations. In their slide, they say, with the variable cost of construction, they reflect a low, medium, high cost range, somewhere between $55.5 million and he's saying this wrong. I'm so sorry. They put notes from another company, so this is really exciting. So somewhere between a $31.85 million and a $38.928, if you can see on the numbers here. So if you look at the very bottom, just to follow along, the very bottom of this, and again, I do apologize. As perfection as I try to be, I do apologize that the Wi-Fi and the technical difficulties do not allow him to be on this call. But what's really important is that if you look at the very bottom, you'll see the total uses of funds. So you'll be able to compare the funds for a low, middle, and high for all 3 of those options. Is everyone following? Is there any questions? Cool, awesome. So where do they get these cost estimates? We have and are developing 100 of these facilities across the country. We have the data and know how much it costs to develop. We take this data and analyze how much the average cost of everything is, from hard cost to site development to material to F&B. We then apply regional construction cost data to adjust for specific markets, i.e. example, this would not be the same numbers we would show to build in Los Angeles, California. These numbers are updated in real time, so they've actually used SFD sharing data.
Christina, I'm a little slow. Can you remind us what is included in the FEC?
Yes, it's a family entertainment center.
What is included in that?
Yeah, so basically all they're saying is they're proposing this. So in the initial rendering we're showcasing, we didn't include a family entertainment center. What they're saying is that in between games, if kids had, not to say Chuck E. Cheese, but like a main event, or 10,000 square feet of just games that they could be able to play, it's more revenue. And so they're suggesting it because they've seen a high uptick in their other facilities that have allowed for them to produce high producing yields.
Games, prizes, food?
Games, prizes, food, main event, hatching. I shouldn't keep saying that, but yeah. And I don't mean to say like this is my first time hearing it. This is him presenting what he believes would be not just most feasible, but more economic. But at the same time, it's the numbers that we're really looking at, right?
Christina, I think you or Chris already said this, but we already have the land for this, or we don't have the land for this one yet?
It's the Great Lawn.
We do. It's
This
the
is
Great Lawn.
Okay, I saw TBD on land, so I was just making sure.
Yeah, it truly, when y'all leave here, just look right outside. Yeah, it has a walking path directly across from it. Okay, so now we are looking at industry benchmarks. So this will kind of give you a little bit. This is just like a threshold of a rev par, typically for a low performance, a middle performance, and a high performance. Here they're just showcasing a rev par per square footage. Obviously, we just discussed this difference in the square footage between 6 courts and 8 courts. And within the food and beverages, there's also inclusion of sponsorship and advertising. Because, I mean, let's be honest, you know, just like the baseball fields, we're going to put ads up, right? As we continue on, we're going to see the performance range. So this is the slide I think everyone really wants to see. In it, you know, you've got to understand that a low is mostly not necessarily just attracting for tournaments. It's truly like a community quality of life investment, right? In the middle and then the high performance. So that's what the 3 different tiers of the numbers is. And within those revenues, it includes the event areas, the family entertainment centers. So you'll see a revenue expense right there, Katie. And then at the same time, you'll have the indoor lease space and the supporting revenue of food and beverage, including the sponsorship.
On that previous slide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's go
Where
back.
it says economic impact, I want to make sure I understand correctly, where it says total economic impact per court is, so if we have 6 courts, are we saying 500,000 for each court? Is that how I'm to understand it?
Each court annually.
Okay.
Annually. And I'm so excited about that because I can't wait for the last slide. It's my favorite. Yeah, so take a minute to think about what he was showcasing. In it, there's an annual cost recovery, but it's also showcasing that the economic impact for the indoor courts would be in the low end 500,000 and a high performing would be 2 million annually.
Per court.
Per court.
This is what they already know because they've done it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, they've definitely done it. And if you go to sports facilities companies, take a minute to look at their website. It's incredible to see all the different facilities that they're currently managing and then which ones that they've built out. That's why I really wanted them to talk and not me. I really planned this out, okay? It didn't work.
You're doing great. Yeah.
So here's the cost of goods sold. So that's the second tier of where we are. So we see the total revenue numbers of a low performance, middle performance, and high performance. In the cost of goods sold, this includes everything from the court and event area, the family entertainment center, the indoor lease space, the supporting revenue, and the sponsorship totals. So think about it, just to explain. So sponsorships, we may be taking in a revenue of $69,000, right? But we need to print those signs for each one of the sponsors, so it's going to cost us $17,000, right? Give or take how like these line items work. So when you go to the actual gross margin, you'll be able to see the percentage of revenue, but you'll, more importantly, as you continue on, you'll see the expenses. So we're not just talking, we're showcasing the facility expenses, the operating expenses, and the management payroll. So management payroll is going to be like the third-party management fee, and it's already included in this. At the same time, you'll have payroll taxes, benefits, and bonuses. They generally see that with new facilities, they grow at about 20%. 15%, and then 10% within the 5-year increments. And that's just a standard, but, something key that I can't wait to really let you hear about is just that Interstate 10. What makes our market so amenable is the fact that we're right off Interstate 10. So when you think about your sports tourist traveler, they're not getting in a plane to come to play on a tournament. They're truly packing the kids up, right? The younger kids that aren't even playing are coming too, and those younger kids need something to do. So that's what makes Beaumont such an amenable location. I'm hurrying up. I'm with you if our timing is rough. So then this slide, I'm so excited about. Okay, so if there's anything you take from today, I'd like you to memorize this slide, because the economic impact expectation of 8 courts in a low, middle, and high performance is as follows. And this is annually. So it's 4 million in a low, 9.6 in a middle, and 16 million in a high. I would just say this is, I know that I'm not the best person because I'm not sports facilities, but I will tell you just this. The thing about Texas is how big Texas is, and a lot of these tournaments, they move. They go to different destinations, so it's not always held at the same place and time. And so what's really exciting for us is that you may hear about Baytown and a similar project, but theirs is only going to be 4 basketball courts. And so by having 8 courts, it allows you to be amenable to more regional, outside of regional tournaments. So you can start getting outside of the state. And being along Interstate 10 is what made them say that the rendering of 6 courts wasn't enough. And that's really what happened. So that's why a lot of this
So let me ask you a question. So what is the closest city that has these type of facilities to Beaumont?
Bryan, Texas.
Wow.
And Legends is, and the really interesting about this is that when you go to the right of Interstate 10, it's about 7.5 hours in Alabama.
Wow, okay.
And that's where this gets really fun, because I went to Disney, and my waitress can remember Beaumont, Texas from coming in a baton twirling contest when she was in the 6th grade.
Yes.
And it was something that happened here. And you got to think about it. I mean, it's just, that's the type of travelers we want in Interstate 10. I mean, there's 6, 7 states in the South, and we should be tracking that.
Huge distance between those two. Beaumont could be sucking it all in.
Well, and more importantly, it's the cost of the hotels. We are so lucky that we have such affordable hotels, because that's what they're really looking for. So sometimes when you have a tournament in San Antonio, you're costing out $260 to $300 for a hotel night. And that's not even including their taxes, because San Antonio's hot tax and destination tax are way higher. I mean, you're looking at closer to 26%. Yeah, something to really consider.
I had a quick question. On page 12, it states that our income from visitors was $391 million, and it's up 8.8% year over year. So what would a project like this, in your opinion, or through statistics, I'm sure you know where I'm going with that, what does that number look like? Because this obviously is without something like this. So what would that look like for our bottom line, per se?
Okay, so instead of talking theoreticals, I'm going to tell you what's actual real numbers. So in a data of that 149,000 sample that we talked about with points of interest from cell phones that were pinged, and that's outside of a 50-mile radius, okay? Of those 149,000 visitors, 35% of them specifically went to Ford Park baseball fields. 35%. So you've got to consider, you truly have to consider that, and that's one sport. And it's one sport based off of weather. I think that that's where this really opens the doors, because not only, I mean, even in the event of, a monsoon, 4 to 6 hours of rain, 4 to 6 inches of rain in 2 hours. I mean, that court's still going to be open and available. And so that's what's really exciting about this project, is that it's not requiring as much land as the baseball fields really take. And as you can see here, it's affordable. I mean, the return on this is just huge. And again, remember, at some point, there will be other downtown projects that this will truly benefit.
Christina, would this also be available as a facility for city use when it's not being rented, or no? Because I'm just thinking about some of the other projects that maybe this could take money that we had planned for basketball courts and things like that. can the public use these if they reserve them? How does that work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so the best part about this is that what sports facility, at the end of the day, sports facility is just the manager. You are still the owner as the city of Beaumont. And as much as they don't want the city intervening, because you don't want XYZ council members' daughter's wedding to get there to be free and all those other things, at the same time, it's encouraged based off of what the city wants. So if the city wants 2 days to be specifically for community development and outreach, it's going to happen, you know, and that's the way they kind of look at it. They're, as much as they're, at the end of the day, they're guaranteed a certain rate, and you can see what that rate is, you know. This is a low performance, and they're still expecting 300K. So as long as, you know, we're paying that management fee, they're wanting, the building is still the city's. And some of the questions that we started having was, in the food and beverage aspect, you know, as we start looking, there's some other options. There's some potentially, maybe there's a college that potentially wanted, you'll see on some of the slides, you'll see like LIT or some other references. And that's just because there could be other options. You know, there could be other feasibility. But truly, at the end of the day, that food and beverage cost is really what allows for this to guarantee it's not going to, you know, incur too much funds that would be unaffordable for the city. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but 30, does that help or answer? I feel like it's really exciting because I can get into data and statistics on our visitors all day long. So, okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so I know we said 2 projects, but y'all mentioned this last meeting, and I'm so excited because everyone in this room has heard me say revenue like 30 times. So what I'd like to just showcase is why economic development matters in this bond. It's not just about bringing in new businesses, it's about building revenue streams that allow us to reinvest in everything else. So streets, public safety, parks, neighborhoods. If we want to deliver a better quality of life, we're going to have to fund it. So that means including projects in this bond that generate real sustained returns for the city. Economic development has to be a part of the conversation, and as we continue to look at improving places like Terrell Park, or enhancing public spaces, or investing in recreational amenities like the golf course, we obviously all want to make Beaumont more livable and more competitive. But we have to understand that these investments also help. They help recruit employers. They help allow people to choose where they want to live and where they want to work. So there is other aspects to this outside of the quality of life. But not all of these projects are going to bring the same return profile, and they're not all meant to, obviously. Like public safety projects, like the fire station or the animal control, they're critical, and they must be prioritized, but we also have to take advantage of those projects that are on this that are actually going to allow for some growth. So I brought some supporting data for one of the projects. I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's really important to see a little bit more of the data on the Dallin Road extension. It has a major potential to unlock commercial development and to drive future sales tax growth. And I'm focusing on today, you know, these 2 transformational downtown projects, not just because they're pretty, but because they're powerful. These projects have the ability to attract private investment, increase foot traffic downtown, and support small businesses. Because economic development is about the return, it's about the reinvestment. And if we want to fund the future that our residents deserve, we have to start building the revenue to sustain it. So within the Dallin Road extension, I'd like to show you some numbers that were proposed as an analysis from 2019. And initially I thought, oh my gosh, I need to update these numbers. But instead, I felt like it would be better for you to see the actual numbers from 2019. So before any of you think that this could be inflated or, you know, outside of the scope of what could be rendered, just consider the fact that these numbers could actually be much, much larger than what they appear. In it unlocks 1,600 acres of underutilized land for commercial and residential growth. The taxable value projected is to increase from $5 million to $373 million. Obviously, that's within 20 years, but again, life of the bond, right? It generates $2.45 million a year in new property tax revenue. $2.45 million a year in new property tax revenue. So that's over 49 million in cumulative revenue over 20 years. And again, 2019 numbers, but more importantly, it almost goes close enough to say that the road could pay for itself. And it's exciting to see dollar for dollar how much that could be spent. More importantly, just in case you think that these numbers are just conceptual, I wanted to spend time and show you the intersection right before at Phelan and Dallin. So consider where the location is, just to make sure everyone's familiar. We're talking Phelan and Dallin. When you go over the bridge, that would be where Dallin would extend, as it would extend to Washington, to Walden, and then to Interstate 10, right? So this is truly the intersection right before what would be the future intersection of Dallin and College. Within it, sorry, I think I talked too much about water, turning into miles. Okay, so to make this even more real, we're sitting at 132 million of current market value. This data was actually intended, pulled from JCAD, so this is true appraisal district data. And what's more important is that is just the market value of the property taxes. Imagine how much the sales tax would be. So I don't know, John, how much roughly do you think your sales tax that you're paying, thank you so much, on your property is? Considering it's one of these that it's within this actual intersection. I mean, it's a lot. He doesn't need to say what the number is. But that's what's really exciting about this, is that you're looking at a market value of $132 million. And that's just an assessment of property tax and not any other. And you know a majority of that Phelan colonnade is commercial. So consider that. So just playing with some numbers, let's just say that there's 10% turnover in those commercial sales. You could consider the city tax revenue to be about $198,000 in this one intersection. And this is just a 100-foot circular radius. Buxton Brewery actually got cut off on the other end, and the school is not included as well. You know, this is, it's simple. It's a revenue generator, and economic development is about a return on investment, and that's truly what I'm here to talk about today. It's not a hypothetical. It's already working, and if you don't believe in these numbers, just know this. One intersection here, there's 3 intersections on this road map. So start multiplying all the numbers that we're discussing and really take a little bit bigger of a glimpse.
There's 4.
Yeah.
4 intersections.
Right, 4, obviously, but 3 on top of the one that I just showed you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
yes.
I'm sorry, 3 plus 1 equals 4, I apologize. 3 additional intersections outside of the initial one that we had just discussed.
Okay, on those areas, you don't have to go from College to Interstate 10, do you? Can we break that up into pieces?
So currently, they're going to show you the matrix. Initially, it was proposed to you as from going from College to Walden, and then Walden to Interstate 10. So the Dallin Road extension was divided into 2 sections.
2 then.
Now, in that conversation, Molly had mentioned that it could be divided into 3 sections. So the 3 sections that could be divided into is from College to Washington, Washington to Walden, Walden to Interstate 10.
Okay.
Yeah?
With the thought of additional residential and commercial development, 2019 leads me to believe this has been stalled or it's just been kind of put on the back burner. What has been the biggest challenge and why hasn't this gone forward?
Okay, I'm going to let Molly answer or Chris, because they've obviously been here longer, but I just want you to reiterate why that CIP, what we just talked about, the community investment plan, right? This Dallin Road extension has been on that community investment plan multiple years. And so we have to also understand that, you know, hurricanes have also happened, right? Other needs and essentials that came before, because fiscally the city has to be responsible. So I think something really interesting about this community investment plan is that it's a document that's fluid. So while they've mapped out the next 5 years, it's only adopted year to year. It changes. Every year it changes because it's got to be within the financial security that the city has. And I don't want to tell you how much this used to cost on the CIP, because it will blow your mind just how much more expensive it is.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
not mistaken, as I understand, at this time, Dowling does not connect to I-10. The only main, I guess, streets we have would be MLK, College, Walden.
Major.
Major drive.
Major.
Okay.
Drive.
Okay.
And do you want to give some
Yeah,
light
I'll
on?
just offer a little history insight. Obviously, this extension of Dallin has been on our comprehensive major street plan for decades. But again, over the years, we've realized, this would really be a catalytic project to open up that area to, not only relieve traffic, but encourage development, connecting what is probably the busiest shopping corridor in the city with I-10 directly. To answer your question, though, it's cost. And so over the years, as you look at the cost, you can look at the cost now, page 5 of your matrix, just for this stretch, and it's significant. And so that's why bonds are so critical, is because, again, this is an opportunity to finance a really, really big project that would pay dividends, for our children and grandchildren.
And I would just say, I'm so grateful that, we're here discussing this today, because I have learned more about bonds in the last 3 months than in my entire life, right? And it's so interesting because when you really start looking at it, I would just open PDF after PDF and be like, wait, this city, another one, and that's just it. Your average of cities going out to bond is within every 3 to 5 years, right? And so for us to have waited 43 years, and at the same time for our property tax to continuously decrease since 2018, I mean, there's a reason it's been great as a resident, but at the same time, it's time for us to start investing in our city.
Christina, just to answer your question, up until 2000, the city of Beaumont was stymied of any growth going northwest of Beaumont. Amoco Oil Company owned all of the land out there, and they weren't selling it. In 2000, they announced a huge sale of 4,000 acres. HEB got built because of that. Dowling Road got expanded and everything else. Northwest Parkway got put in. Folsom got put out all the way out to Major Drive. Delaware got extended all the way to Major Drive. Amoco Oil Company kind of held us back from developing that part of Beaumont. So when 2000 came along, we were able to start developing that part of Beaumont. That part now is overbuilt. There's nothing, yes, there's some land going down Delaware. Yes, there's a little bit of land going down Folsom. The next really boom is going to be Northwest Parkway and Point Parkway. Mm-hmm. The other boom is going this direction here. And it's really going to take, the city has to put in the infrastructure. Yeah. A developer cannot put in an infrastructure for that because it's just too expensive to bring the type of sewer and the type of water that needs to go in there. So it is, they're putting out the money, but they're going to reap a lot of return whenever the Broussards start selling property out there. I own Washington Boulevard, Four Corners. I didn't know this was coming up, and I'll recuse myself from voting if the time comes. But we own the Four Corners. But we've owned them we own land on Delaware that we've owned for 25 years. Yes. Northwest Parkway was bought in 2000, and we still own it 25 years later. And we hadn't sold the first site out of it because Beaumont hasn't quite gotten to that point right there. Now it's getting to that point. And the only way we're going to ever turn Beaumont around is we got to do some really creative thinking. Yes, the refineries are doing all the expansion they can do, and I am very appreciative of those refineries. And they're bringing a lot of people in here, but our school system has to get upright.
That's right.
And I don't know how to do that. I'm not a school person, but I know we need to do that. And then we need to work with the city, and this bond needs to pass in order to get some of these things taken care of. Yes, the policemen need a new police station. Yeah. Yes, we got to build a new fire station. That's a no-brainer. I've been driving around town just looking to see where we could put Firehouse number 4 in the same area that it needs to be in. But I just think that this is really something that we need to really do. Yeah. Now, it's our job to go convince your individual friends, because you start talking about hotels and you start talking about sports complexes, and let me tell you something, you're gonna get some pushback. I've already gotten some pushback, and I hate to pick on the parks people, but I've already got some pushback on spending $17 million on Terrell Park for the golf course. I don't know if we're getting our money's worth out of it or not, but I'm willing to try. I mean, I do what we can. You gamble. It's nothing but a big gamble is all.
Well, Sam, but it's just, we're here to put it before the people.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we're not deciding. We just structuring this thing down. Ultimately, it comes to the people.
But you have to go to those people, and you need to convince those people that this is the thing to do.
Yes.
If you're in favor of it, you need to be the salesperson to go out and sell this.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't tell them and you let them go to the polls and vote, it'll never pass.
I hear
You
you.
have to get out there and tell people what to do.
And then I put a business card on every one of your seats with my personal cell phone on it. So when you hear negativity on any of the downtown projects, actually any of these projects I've
Hey,
mentioned,
but you got a question?
you call my cell phone.
Is there anyone here who can speak to the impact of the, say, for instance, expansion, they're talking about for Field and Dowling. Is there anyone that could talk to what would happen to the drainage on the downside of that expansion? Because we know where there's a lot of commercial development, water starts moving a lot faster. Right, Jim?
Correct.
Okay, so my concern is, I think this is wonderful that we can look at doing it, but I'm also concerned as to how that will impact some of the communities who've never had drainage problems, who have started having drainage problems as a result of some development. I'm not blaming that on anybody, but I'm just wondering, has anybody thought through that, talked about it any, or is there a plan in place to address the infrastructure on this level of expansion?
Molly, you want to address this, or you want to take a shot at it? Go ahead.
While Molly's coming up, I'm gonna just say one thing. When we're developing commercial properties today, unlike 2000, we've got to hold the water that was on that property long enough to let the system take care of itself. So now, if you're doing commercial development, you're doing a retention pond, or you're doing some underground storage under the parking lots to hold that water. So as you're covering up grass with concrete, you're making some provisions to do that, and that is on the developers and on the people that are doing the work, unlike we had a long time ago.
Don, you're addressing exactly what my concern is, and we were talking about it, and Sam said, yes, we have to go out and sell it, but we got to make sure that we're selling the whole package. You know, there are things that we would like to see downtown happen, because that'll do a lot for the economic development aspect. There's a lot we'd like to see going northwest and in that direction to the south, Sam, you know, further expanding it, because those areas are built out. But we have to be able to address honestly where that water is going to go.
Drainage District 6 is doing a great job out there.
They sure are.
I knew a guy used to work out there, but he left.
And all I'm telling you is, we can get a representative of drainage, and maybe we need a representative from Drainage District 6 to answer some of those questions, Molly.
Yeah, and so what I wanted to start with is, and that is a very valid question. That is a question that we as city staff deal with on a regular basis. Even when you see a subdivision go in, there's a row of lots, their backyard's never flooded, and then the next phase comes in behind them, and lo and behold, now their backyard's no longer drained because they're not draining to the street. So on a localized basis, what we are doing is creating, we had an older drainage criteria manual that is the same age as me. It has not been updated, I won't say the year. And so then in looking at that and looking at what is coming out with the new information after the drainage master plan was developed back in 2020, we identified that there is more that needs to be done. And so we reached out to our local engineering community, and we have started work. We engaged an engineer to do a drainage criteria manual, a full update. And it's still a work in progress. We are still refining it, especially in light of like these recent rain events, because most drainage criteria manuals don't really focus on how do you handle 4 inches of rain in less than an hour. And that's a significant, that's a 50-year storm. So we've got to look at the best science that's available to us. And so we're working through that. The goal, once we complete this manual, we're working in collaboration, not only amongst ourselves with the local design community, and we're also working with Jefferson County and with the local Drainage District 6. So once that manual is put together, all 3 agencies will adopt it together for future design, keeping in mind the new design standards that are coming in. This will help us incorporate DD6's new drainage manual. There are studies that they are currently doing, but the other aspect of that on a larger, so that's on the small scale, what you're going to see day to day. On the large scale, what we are also fortunate in is that the Park North development, the Dowling Road extension are in the middle and in the midst of a lot of what DD6 has done for our community as far as their detention ponds, their drainage studies. And so some of the developments that we're seeing, especially for these large-scale tracks, the engineers that they are engaging, they are also coordinating with the drainage district to make sure that, because a lot of what they have designed considered that future development was going to come in these areas. And Joe, you can jump in and correct me if I'm speaking incorrectly, but a lot of that was considered. And these developers are coming to us, they're coming to DD6, and we're working together to make sure that we are accommodating that. Related to the Dowling Road extension, that new ditch, I don't know the designation of it, that is paralleling the LMBA Canal just north of Crescent on Walden. That's a new outfall, that is a new outfall channel as well that is facilitating a lot of this area.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Molly mentioned. Drainage District 6, before I left a couple of years ago, received $57 million grant. And part of the grant is to improve a lot of drainage system in Jefferson County. One of the projects is that Molly mentioned, there's a channel run parallel to LNBA Canal. The improvement has been done on it. Mr. Parigi, downstream, he had to donate a big chunk of property. So it's going to be some coordination between the city and the DD6, but the city's responsibility is to install the drainage within this project. So hopefully no detention is required. We'll find out more. This will, and what make it feasible, it's the ditch is in the middle of the project. Mr. Parigi mentioned that the utilities are most expensive part whenever you build roads like this. We're fortunate we have a large main down Washington, water main. There's one large main on the south side of Interstate 10. So the boundaries have large mains, so all you need to do, run 12, 16, 18-inch line down Walden Road, you should be in good shape. If the main in Washington did not exist, or the main down Interstate 10 did not exist, the project would be extremely expensive. This is good benefits by having the infrastructure in place. Also, on the wastewater side, there's a large sewer line between Washington and Walden Road, and the city should be able to tap into this line, which take it all the way to Terra Park Lift Station. So the main connection points are in place to tie into it. That's what makes this project very feasible from water and wastewater and drainage. There's still some cost for the on-site system, but the off-site system receiving or tying into it, it's in place and it's adequate.
Well, the reason I was bringing it up, because I think everybody that's sitting around the table need to understand those are some concerns that may not be voiced right now, but when we start trying to sell this and say this is what we're going to do in the effort to promote our community on this side of town, it's going to be something that people go to the polls and vote against, and I don't want it to be that way.
Correct.
So we need to be upfront and learn as much as we possibly can about what's being, what's in store, because I do understand when you do new construction, you also have to put in new drainage. That's been that way for 20, 30 years that I know about.
Definitely.
But I just wanted to make sure that everybody at the table is in a position to be able to discuss that. Point in case, so you understand exactly the reason I'm bringing this up. There are communities out off Washington, from between the interstate and going back toward 11th Street, never, ever flooded. Never. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but in the last major flood, every house in that neighborhood off of Blossom Hall,
Significantly
every
impacted.
single
And
one of them, except two.
Yeah, Harvey and then Imelda came back and just knocked them back down again. And that is something that we're continuing to work with the Drainage District. So in the Harvey round two, so thanks to Harvey, there was another grant that was, I guess it was part of the 57 million, but the district has committed, and they're currently working on the plans to alleviate more of the impact in that Blossom Corley area. That water has got to find its way to the Nature's River and not overload Hillebrand Bio, because most of this development that's proposed in these two projects will impact Hillebrand Bio. So that water, we cannot put more water into Hillebrand. We've got to relieve that. So this Corley diversion project is scheduled to take some of this water out of that bowl that is the Corley area and is going to bring it to the Nature's River near the area of like Franklin in Pennsylvania. And that is the current route. We are working with the district and their consultant as we work through the challenges of getting this large drainage project over to the Nature's River. We're also looking at, we pursued funding now on a couple of occasions to take water from the South Park area and get it also to the Nature's River so that it's not trying to fight under Cardinal Drive, under the LMBA Canal, across the railroad tracks, trying to get to Hillebrand Bio. And so diverting that water, the project application that we submitted was along Florida Avenue, or Jim Gilligan. I'm sorry, I'm older, so it's Florida. And no disrespect to Coach Gilligan, he's awesome. But taking that water down Florida, we have identified a path for that. And it's very expensive as well, but we have got to get more opportunities to divert this water to Hillebrand. DD6 is working on making those improvements along Hillebrand. They've worked with TxDOT to where Cardinal crosses over Hillebrand to maximize that crossing as well, so that it is not working as a dam like it did in Imelda, where it just got overwhelmed. And so we're constantly bouncing ideas together to make sure that we collaborate and that we are enhancing the work that we're doing for each other, and that way we're not working at opposing goals.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Not to turn this into a public works exhibition, but I think it's important everybody understand a little bit of history and know what's being put in place to prevent that from happening again with the retention funds and whatever else they're doing. So I think that's critical, because we want to see success on both ends of the city, but at the same time, we got to be concerned about the people who are concerned about their investments as well.
Yeah, we can't do the development at their expense, and that is against every tenet of public health and safety. So we've got to make sure that everything that we design is designed as holistically as we can.
To add to what Molly mentioned, for the new project, if you're concerned about drainage, whenever the city designed the project, and they have to look at the tributary area, the land use, and they have to design it to accommodate for this. So this should be addressed during the design. So that should not be a problem. The flooding you're seeing on South 11th Street in this area, over the last 10 years, you see big increase in the intensity of rain and the duration of rain. You have intense rain and higher, more frequent happening. The design criteria has been changed to address this for the future project, And for the current condition, the city and DD6 working together to put detention pond to account for this, the difference between the previous design criteria and new design criteria. We used to receive, you remember the 100-year frequency, 11?
The 100-year was 13 inches for 24 hours, and I don't know the new number, but
14,
everything.
the new one is 14.7 roughly. So there's like 10, 11% increase in the intensity of rain. So this intensity of rain, the difference between previous years and the last 10 years is 10, 15% more rain you're receiving. So that's why you see some localized flooding.
Well, one thing that was stated makes a lot of difference is that we've been talking about trying to get the water to the river.
Correct.
Because Hillebrand Bayou, you know, it gets jammed up and that's it.
Well, let me give you a little bit background on Hillebrand Bayou. The Corps engineers designed Hillebrand Bayou and Taylor's Bayou and Pine Island Bayou and turned it over to DD6 to maintain. Hillebrand Bayou designed for 27-year frequency. Whatever year, I don't know. Why they use 27 years? Typically, you design for 100-year frequency. Taylor's Bayou, 100-year, Hillebrand Bayou is 25-year. So the only way you can take pressure off it to send it to the river. And we, as a community here, we need to support these diversion projects. One of the excellent projects was Calder Avenue. It saved Calder, saved everything. So we need one or two more projects. Molly mentioned the one at Cardinal Drive. This is a must project to help the south end of the city, and we need another one here on the north end of the city to help just move water from Hillebrand Bayou to the Neches River. I know I don't want to take too much of your time.
Great stuff, great information.
Very valuable information.
So, thank you. Yeah, we need to talk drainage, so I'm so glad that you brought that up. I have another question that I think might be for Jeff. So on the downtown project, you've talked about the flexibility and the freedom that we have to bucket some of these projects in different areas. So when I hear the downtown project, what I'm actually hearing now, as it's been posed, is a parks project and this profit-generating athletic complex. Is there a potential that rather than having a downtown bond that might be labeled as such, that you could include the Riverside Park into the parks and then have an profitable athletic complex be its own separate bond as well?
Great question. We'd have to run it by the bond council, but really looking, I think it would meet all the criteria to be in a parks bond. So you could take that, just as you're saying, and put that into parks. Kara, don't you think so?
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go really fast in the last two slides. Okay, so just really quickly, just the last slide was just like, obviously, okay, sorry, I'm not gonna say anything. Just this, it's simply this. I'm not tone deaf. I live in the city of Beaumont. I obviously know of crime and flooding and everything that, you know, and I'm on Facebook, right? I just wanted to include this slide because I think it's also important to realize that there is some huge successes that the city has right now. And so as you continue to hear about the misconception of crime downtown, I think something that could be supplemental in this bond would just simply be expanding on the success of the Real-Time Crime Center and what flock cameras are able to do here. It was just a simple kind of last minute kind of slide to simply say that just imagine the crime that would be tiered with adding like $1 million to this bond just for, you know, 18 flock cameras and 20 years of.
What's the flock camera?
Oh, yes. Can I answer this? Officer, Tim, do you want to take this? What is a flock camera? I think it's the coolest thing I've ever witnessed. I cannot believe how much detail it's able to give. It's like AI and a camera, and it can help really, it's been so successful in helping them solve crimes. Sorry, thank you.
Good evening. The Flock is a brand, it's a vendor. And basically it's a turnkey operation. It's one of the many opportunities for license plate reader technology. So basically it's just one of the vendors that we use. And it's the fact that it's a turnkey operation is handy because we don't have to deal with data storage, we don't have to deal with maintenance, we don't have to do it with the installation. So if somebody knocks it down, the company comes back and puts it back up. So This is just one of the systems that we're advocating for neighborhoods and for other organizations, HUD, and others, and the city itself has purchased some over the years.
So it reads the license plates or cars or what, I don't,
Can I jump in real
Correct.
quick because of this? So in January of this year, I live in the west end of Beaumont. You wouldn't really think that there's going to be a lot of crime.
It's a
My
lot of
husband's
crime.
truck was stolen out of our driveway at 6:15 or 5:45 in the morning. They found, because of the real-time crime center and because of these flock cameras, they found his truck in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Within 6-7 hours. And there was a high-speed chase a little bit. They got it. We got the truck back, besides the fact that it smelled like 5 million pounds of weed. It was in good condition. But it was because of these cameras and these flock cameras, because they traced the license plate
Yes.
at all of these intersections and whatever, and they found, and Beaumont
Love that.
found it.
I love that, yeah.
Chief, did the flock cameras have anything to do with how quickly y'all caught the man that was on the motorcycle that had that shooting?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's recently.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you and I visited some of those centers, there's stuff that can read your face, facial recognition.
Yeah.
It allows officers to know exactly what the situation is before they even get to the site.
I like it, I like anything that
It's
back on
object
crime,
recognition.
anything, that's nice, flock. So I now know what it is, thank you.
And in the system, you can expand, you can start in a certain area and expand through the city, correct? And if you install a camera in this area of crime, after the crime drops in the area, you can move this camera, utilize it
Well,
somewhere else.
whoever owns them or leases them, it's a annual fee for this particular vendor. And they can move them, whoever owns them can have them moved. There is a cost to move them, but that is an opportunity, yes.
My point is, the city doesn't have to make major investment, can make investment and budget to expand over the years.
We
Is that-
have.
is that the game plan?
Over the last couple of years, that's what we've done. And over the last year, I guess, 2 budgets. And we're also really making a lot of headway getting other organizations and HOAs and so forth to jump in on this. So it's not all the city taking the brunt of this, but it's more of a partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that, right? Think of all the HOAs, just simply getting one in their neighborhood. And more importantly, just imagine these same areas where we're consistently having crime, having boxing it in, how strategic and important that is. Okay, all right. And then last slide, real quickly, obviously tourism is economic development. You've listened so much about tourism today, but that number, can anyone remember that number? No?
91 million.
Yeah, that's a huge number. It's huge, right? An 8% increase. And just think about that. That's 391 million with the hotels that we have today, right? Without a sports complex. So just think through that. And then finally, I just ask that as y'all prioritize, I just encourage you to ask, will this dollar work for the city? Will it drive growth and strengthen our workforce? Because remember, commercial development brings jobs, right? And then will it generate long-term revenue or just create short-term expenses? Really, really, really grateful for the time today. And again, my cell phone is on all those business cards, so please feel free to call if you have any questions.
Thank you, Christina.
Christina, I have one question.
Yeah.
How long would it take to develop the park, the athletic complex? Should we decide to do it?
So they would say anywhere from a year and a half to 2 years from the groundbreaking. A huge problem right now is not like materials and sourcing them. It's truly if there's any infrastructural needs that need to be addressed before being built. Yeah, but really, really great question. And I have to tell y'all, when you leave here, you should definitely drive by the Great Lawn because, 12 acres is just sitting there with a walking track that's already in existence that we can keep there. So sports complex.
You like that, don't you?
Well, really excited.
It's not even just that. And then there's an event center directly across so that typically after sports tournaments on Sunday is an awards ceremony, right? So you already have locations and just imagine conventions. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
All right.
May I make comment, Mr. Lewis? Just like to make a quick comment.
Yes.
Okay, the downtown projects, what make them attractive is the location of these projects. Is visible from Interstate 10, people driving down Interstate 10, they're gonna see the projects, they're gonna easy access on off Interstate 10. That's number one, and number two, whenever you develop a project like this, you have to bring sometimes water and sewer and drainage to it. And access, you already have Calder project running down right here. There's still plenty capacity in the box to adapt to it. You mentioned concrete surface have a lot of runoff, so you have the box, you can't tap to it. You have water and sewer right here. City does not have to front this, so this make it attractive. The on-site system has to be built. So off-site utilities exist and adequate. The same way the Great Lawn, Green Lawn, its facilities nearby, and best thing is the parking lot. When you build a facility like this, you have to build supporting parking lot. You already have parking lot all over the place to be utilized, especially at night too. And the green lawn today costs the city a lot of money to maintain. This maintenance cost will go away if you build facilities, correct? That's what I'd say.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I didn't want to cut that off because really good discussion, a lot of great questions, but we do have a ways to go yet, just making some decisions. I think it'll be kind of fun from here on. I guess a question for you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of you. Do you want, I know everybody just had dinner and some drinks. Do you want to take 10 minutes for some bathroom breaks, or do we just want to push on?
Push on.
Push on.
I said, yeah,
Great.
I'm good.
All right. Then we want to start getting into this real prioritization. You know, you heard you saw 38, 39 million up there, for example, on one of those projects, but we heard it's going to take 2 to 3 years to build. So just a reminder that when you see the final numbers over in your spreadsheet, we've put in contingency and some inflation, because what it costs to build it today and what it costs to build it 3 years from now is not going to be the same. So we've tried to build that in. That's why you'll see those numbers a little higher than maybe what you see on the actual cost estimates. All right. With that in mind, Kara, are you, oh, yeah, thank you. It's me, not you. So let's talk about prioritization. Before we jump in, just a few quick things. We're going to be talking about first downtown, like we just heard, and then we'll be refining decisions that we've talked about before, the parks. It'll be a good time to talk about how we want to set up those propositions, okay? Essentially, here are the numbers with some inflation, also maybe a little bit of money in there for those, maybe the license plate reading cameras, some of that. I think, Christina, those are running maybe $1 million, covers a lot there, right?
Lord Jesus.
So then on economic and community development, just a reminder, we've been doing this throughout, so about 24% of the people, when we did the community survey, ranked this as one of their top 3 priorities. That was pretty high. It was behind infrastructure, so it was behind roads and sidewalks, but it was ahead, actually, of parks and facilities. Now, it wasn't phrased quite the same, right? It was phrased as, I believe, economic and community development projects such as a civic center and other things like it, right? Then we'll be doing, as we said, these parks and priorities, and we're ready to go to Mentimeter. So if you guys want to take out your phones, we'll jump right into a few of those. We're going to cover downtown first, as we said. Then we're going to move on to parks and rec, facilities, and police, infrastructure, in roughly that order. So remember, with what we talked about, just very roughly, we're somewhere over $200 million, about 214. We made some assumptions on, I think 214 kind of includes, well, we throw in splash pads or something like that for about $500,000. It included throwing in something like the license plate readers. We're not saying that you want to do that. We just want to give you a number So if you add all that in there, the golf course, but not the police station, you're at about 11 and a quarter, 11 and a half, probably 11 and a half, $11.50 on the average priced home. That's about a $150,000 home. So some of you in here may live in that. Some of you may live in a much higher home. That price is going to go up, obviously, if you live in a more expensive home. But that's assuming about $150,000 worth of property value that gets taxed. Then you would be paying about $11.50 a month for kind of everything we've been talking about, again, minus the police station.
Jeff, just to avoid confusion, the voting is for board members only, correct?
Thank you for the reminder. The voting, we love having you, everybody who's watching and staff, but this is for just the members of the committee.
Should be 12 of us.
Is it 12 or 13? 1, 2,
13?
maybe it is 12.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Dawn,
Yeah, I thought it counted 13 earlier, but thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff, Don went to get his phone, so.
Oh, yeah,
There's 13, Dawn just went.
great.
He'll be back any second now.
Great. And we could have, we would have been glad to help him. Just Joey, y'all remember Joey Ochoa, who's an urban planner. He's helped crank some of the numbers for us, but he's also much more adept at mobile phones and small type, if you need him, than I am. All right. Kara, you can, okay. You can get in here or get in through the QR code, and we'll let Don catch up. Thank you, Kara. Just a reminder, you should have sheets. We've got a sheet. Everybody should have a sheet if you need that, just to show you how to log in, remind you how to log in. And we're going to go to the next one. There we go. Thank you. It shows 17 because that's the total committee, but again, there are 13 present tonight. So that's the number we'll be looking for here. And just if you run into any snags, Joey is available. Joey, I'm going to ask also, everybody's probably got a mic, but in case there's a question for staff, I'll give you this mic.
Stick close to me. Don't go far.
Okay, we've got 11 of us waiting for 2 folks. Should have 13. Kara, can you see? Is everybody showing that you're in? Does anybody have any trouble?
Sorry.
No, no worries.
That should be really to this, but
Did you just get in?
I did. We're at 13.
Yeah, okay, great. All right. Here we go. Now, listen, as we get into this, if I'm going to keep us moving, but if you all want to stop at any point and have a little discussion, we can do that. We can certainly have discussion after some of these votes, too. It'll give you a sense of where it is. On some of these, if some votes are close, we may want to have some discussion and then see if we reach consensus. Okay.
14.
Did somebody else? Kara,
1, 2,
we got 14.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Should just be 13.
I think Chris Boone counted.
Chris, you trying to sneak something in?
Did,
All right.
Fish phone over here.
did somebody on staff or somebody in the audience just log in accidentally? Completely understandable if you did.
Tina, go ahead and press.
Or did I do it twice? Should I don't?
Just don't vote.
Well,
Just don't do it again.
Coach got a burner phone over there.
I know, huh?
okay, we're good. No problem. We've checked it. Somebody just logged in twice, probably as you were getting in, maybe didn't go in, so that'll work out fine. It's all members of the committee who've logged in.
It's me.
Okay.
We trying to get 2 votes.
All right, let's talk first about downtown and the community revitalization and the Riverfront Park extension. Right now, let's don't talk about where it would be, whether it would be, downtown or in a park section, but just do you think this project ought to be in Tier 1, yes, in this bond, Tier 2 would be the maybes, or Tier 3, no, not in this bond? All right, one more, I believe. Anybody having trouble? If not, I will say, there we go. All right, that's everybody. So for now, we've got a supermajority. I think the way we've been operating, we may want some more discussion later, but we're going to go ahead and put this in Tier 1. Does anybody object? All right, so for now, the Riverfront Park extension goes into Tier 1. Yes, on this bond. Now the downtown sports complex, same question. You all heard Christina talk about the downtown sports complex. In this bond, maybe, or not in this bond. So again, not unanimous, but pretty strong consensus in the room to move forward with the sports complex. If there's no objections, we're going to put the sports complex in Tier 1 in this bond for now. And then I think we have a question that we knew Christine was working on some other issues, and it's here, right, on the others. So next. We've looped in some of the security stuff, the cameras, and the license plate readers and security cameras that she talked about. So include that in the bonds.
Did we get a cost on that? Okay.
Christina, you've got some numbers, though. Can you share? Joey, Mike, could you give that to Christina?
You can put the price on safety.
Right.
That's funny. Okay, so initially it cost $350,000 for the camera itself, and $300,000 per year for the software for that camera. So we cost out 9 cameras, and it was closer to like $600,000, and then 18 cameras was $1 million. So we were just thinking that would be a good number. So that's why just $1 million was thrown out, just as an idea.
Thank you.
You guys, I believe everybody should have the matrix we handed these out just in case you haven't seen them. I know you have some paper there, but you've got this at your seat also that we handed out this time. So that has got the projects in the green. Let's take just a second here because this may be helpful to you as we go forward. In the green, those are things that are already in Tier 1. The blue are things that are in Tier 2 and still under consideration. And if it's not highlighted, those are things that are in Tier 3. And those have, you can see, the estimated project cost, a contingency, inflation, and then shows where it is. And I apologize, Mr. Luis, you mentioned the sidewalk master plan, and I see when we rolled that up to make it fit, that's misleading, and we'll get that corrected because that is not just the plan. Again,
That's very important.
it is very important.
Somebody's going to think about us spending $5 million.
Absolutely.
Many sidewalks.
I'm really glad you raised that because we talked about that earlier. We have it in our longer version, and we need to correct that when we roll it up into this condensed version.
And I got a question too, as far as the cameras are concerned. We voiced that we were Definitely tier two, probably tier one when we were doing parks with the security cameras. And, you know, why would that not just, I mean, if you're gonna roll it in the parks and, or however those cameras were rolled in, why would you not roll in the rest of those?
I think you could, there's lots of places we could put those cameras. I think one thing, I think Christina's original thought was we're talking about downtown and these would be focused on downtown and it helps people see, oh, not only are there some facilities, but there's some real public safety additions, enhancements for the community. It just might make people think about the downtown project a little differently. Christine, is that
Yeah,
kind
I
of
just
your
wanted
thought?
to emphasize, you know, that's the best part of this committee is that y'all get to discuss and decide it, right? So if you wanted to expand on those cameras so that some of these neighborhoods or, you know, crime areas, I mean, you know, I'm sure police next bond meeting would love to show, you know, how many it would take to box in a few of those neighborhoods, right? I think that just the course of this here is that there is the notion that downtown is unsafe. And for the city to make this kind of investment, I think it's important for them on the bond to see some of these measurements that are going to be taken. There's definitely going to be others, right? And obviously, like, this could have rolled into a CO, but I think it's important for the voters to see that safety is a concern in these decisions.
And great point. We might take the park cameras and put them into, you know, maybe you put something that's downtown and community investment or something in one package so that all the cameras are together.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Did we scratch out the cameras a couple of meetings ago and said that Junior was taking care of that? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, to my memory.
Yeah, you're not incorrect. We didn't scratch them out. We've gone through 2 phases already with cameras in parks, phase 1 and phase 2. We paid for those out of the general fund. So the plan is continue to pay for those out of the general fund. That's why they're not part of the
You're right.
package.
You're right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Downtown, before we move on, are we, let me just ask the simple question, are we ready to move on and talk about some of the other priorities from last meeting? Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about downtown? All right, we'll come back. I think we do need to have this discussion about propositions and where that belongs.
Jeff, I do have a question.
Yes.
Considering the potential investment that the city is going to make downtown, what is the status of the development of a hotel?
Question.
So essentially, council is meeting with the developer of the potential hotel. I can say they met with them recently, and I can say they're going to meet with them in the very near future. As you can imagine, it's pretty complex in terms of the computation, the market study, feasibility. Right now, we're trying to really get some firm numbers in terms of how much is it going to cost actually. And so to answer your question, those discussions are happening as we speak, essentially. And so in terms of a timeline, I can't say exactly, of course, in terms of when a decision is going to be made. But I can say that you'll probably see some items on the upcoming agenda that are related to it. Again, not decisions, but you'll see, oh, they're talking about it. So in terms of a timeline, you know, our hope is that we have a sense of it's going to be a step process. You know, it's such a big project, it's going to be a step process. So our hope is that sometime this summer, we will know, at least, whether or not we're going to do it.
So would it be fair if we were asked, because we're going to be asked about these type of investments,
yes,
that is going to be something that comes back up. Is it fair for us to say this is more likely, probable,
I can't.
uncertain?
Yeah.
I can't say, of course, I obviously can't speak for the council, and they're still working through all the numbers with the consultant. There are multiple consultants, right? And so I can just say that the fact that the discussion is ongoing is encouraging. And so, as Jeff mentioned at the outset, as you talk about these projects, because you'll notice that, for example, the conversion of the Civic Center to the Convention Center is no longer before this being asked of this committee. And so you might get asked, well, why? And again, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I'll restate it. Jeff mentioned it. all these projects are complementary, and we hope that they all move forward and support each other, because then you have real catalytic projects that have been talked about for decades that will support each other, but they're not mutually exclusive. So if one doesn't go, it doesn't necessarily, it's not fatal for the other project,
And
so.
Last point,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah.
The citizens obviously will ultimately make the decision about whether or not we want to make these investments we're talking about. However, whenever we're talking about the potential development of a hotel, that will be a council decision.
Certainly, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And I just want to add that for the sports complex specifically, there's still 37 other hotel rooms that are currently available in the city. And just remember that economic impact revenue. So while they do stand alone, they would also facilitate future growth.
Chris, what chains are you all looking at? Hotel chains?
I am not able to.
Divulge?
Divulge.
Yeah, I can just tell you, there are a couple flags, and of course, that's all part of the process, but I can say that, I would be very excited. These are full service. These are not limited service hotels.
Okay.
So I think we would all be very pleased if it were to come to fruition.
All right.
So we're still considering 4-star. I know that was how it was portrayed to the community, and I was just wondering.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good question. Stars are a little bit tricky because it's a number of amenities, but they're definitely full service, something you come to expect for a conventions hotel.
Thank you.
On the subject of a hotel, my understanding is there's also Hotel Beaumont that's in downtown that was purchased and is being renovated by a private owner, Mr. Mac Patel. Do you have any information on that? Do you think that could potentially fill the need for a hotel downtown?
Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to
so
take
just real quickly, I can tell you that, Mr. Patel, he bought the Hotel Beaumont several years ago. I know that he is definitely still interested. I can't say he's not actively working on it. I can just say that it's been a while since we've had any kind of discussion, because the city has offered economic incentives to him. And again, we hope that comes to fruition. And again, what we've seen in other cities is when you do the catalytic hotels, a city I used to work for, you did the main first one, and the other ones are follow on. So the hope is down the road, if this is success for us on the riverfront, hopefully he will also say, hey, we need more rooms down here. I'm gonna leverage that to make that a success as well.
Yeah, and if I can just add, you're going to hear a lot about House Bill 5012. The city of Beaumont has actually already lobbied and attained House Bill 5012, which allows for rebates, state hot tax rebates, to apply against the debt on the hotel. And it only requires is that it's within 100 feet of a convention center. So it's in fact a requirement to receive some of these rebates.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
Great. Good questions. All right. Let's go to Parks and Rec. So we talked about these big bang for fewer bucks or for a little bit smaller bucks at the last thing, such as the Parks Director was asked to bring up one, and he said splash pads would be one of his big priorities, and I think that's still true today, right? Still true today. So, and remind us the cost. That was $391, $400,000, something like that?
Just under $400,000.
So about $400,000. And again, what would it do?
Right now, our biggest issue that we have with our splash pads is all the electronics are underground. Lifting them up out of the ground, we did that already at one location, had very little problems after that. So we'd like to lift up all the electronics of the 9 remaining splash pads.
So again, the question last time was, are there small projects that you might fit into a bond and that really aren't prioritized high as a big project but might work through? So that's what we're dealing with here. Should that be a priority? You want the city just to do that year to year as they go, or do we want to put this on the bond?
Mr. Barton, in regards to some of these smaller projects, I noticed that the cost of the basketball courts and the pavilions was relatively, kind of around that range. I feel like perhaps residents may be more willing to fund something like that as opposed to splash pads.
Great. We're going to have some other questions on those too.
Okay.
And I think I think we asked that, first of all, this is why you're here. I think, do you want to just address basketball courts? Because you said you love them, but maybe you don't think that's your highest priority at this point.
Yeah, we have quite a few basketball courts in our parks now. We get a lot of complaints on our splash pads because they're down more than they are running, especially during the summertime. Of course, you know, basketball courts you can play year-round, but we have a lot of kids that want to play on the splash pads. And most of all our parks have basketball.
Why are they down more than they're running?
It's because the electronics are under the ground. Yeah, they flood out, so it's always a short.
Other questions for the Parks Director? All right. Then the question is, again, where do you want to put these for now?
Here we go. Move them to tier 2?
Maybe we should revote.
You want to revote? Kara, can you set this up again? How hard is that for you? I tell you what, let's figure out where it is, and then let's stop and see if everybody. We'll just do that. Good. All right, we're going to take this vote on some of these where it's divided. We'll put them up at the end. Just technologically, that's going to be a little bit easier for us.
It's about 300 total.
All right, so really split. Nobody's in the middle on this one. It's either yes or no. So it's certainly not moving into one for now, and we'll have to figure out what we want to do with this. Let's talk a little bit, and we'll bring this one back up. And basketball courts also got mentioned. So now you heard, you want to talk about basketball courts, lots of use in the community, but also you feel like there are quite a few, and I think you mentioned to me you've got some maintenance and even crime problems with basketball courts. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, sometimes the basketball courts tend to bring out a lot of the vandalism that happens inside of our parks. Usually late at night is when we have, things happen on our playground equipment and things like that, get broken. Even splash pads at nighttime.
Have some cameras out there.
That's why we're putting the cameras out. That's what it takes.
Yeah, because to provide for the kids, we can't let, I see what you're saying, but, yeah.
It goes hand in hand.
Yes, sir.
Now, when we say repairs, what are we repairing?
Yeah.
The court, the goals?
Repairing basketball?
In the bond, if we were to add this into the bond, what would the money really be buying? In the parks plan, and it's, I think this was pulled out of the parks plan as something that was listed in the parks plan.
Are you looking to add additional basketball courts?
No,
or the courts that we have now?
It looks like it's $600,000 to upgrade these basketball courts, and I'm sure people are going to ask, $600,000, what are we doing to the courts?
That would be additional courts.
Oh, additional courts.
Oh, additional
courts.
Do we know where?
Where?
We could talk with our Parks Advisory Committee. They usually make those decisions and talk about where that would happen.
So just to refresh this, you jump in. This is in the parks plan. This is why this came up. I think you brought it up, saying that you thought that was something that you really thought we should add more of for the community. It is in the parks plan, but it was not one of the top priorities that staff came up with, so they don't have it fully teased out. So y'all would be deciding to say, yes, we want some more basketball courts, Parks Department, Parks Board, go figure it out where to put them.
But I think the location where you're going to put these additional basketball courts is extremely important. It's whether it's that big a priority for us to be wanting to move on in a bond issue. Because you can put a basketball court in a park that's the utilization would be very small, and that would be a waste. So I'm just wondering where they plan on putting them.
And I think the answer is they just don't know yet, because glad to get there, but it wasn't originally on their recommendations. So this committee could give some recommendations. It could probably be best. You'd have to say in this case that yes, we're trusting staff and the Parks Board to go out and figure out a good place to put them.
And we haven't had many citizens that reached out to say that we want basketball courts in our neighborhood. Because we have basketball courts throughout the city.
What about the pavilions that were mentioned? Were those not mentioned as well?
Pavilions are high priority.
High priority?
Yeah, they are.
And that's
But are you looking just to go over a
Right.
basketball court or just a picnic pavilion?
Well, actually, I'm curious about both, but my understanding.
Both are mentioned.
I was thinking maybe pavilions for basketball courts so that maybe it's easier to play during the hotter times during the summer.
Like on College Street, they have a pavilion at College. Everybody doesn't have
They
that.
used to have one in Rogers Park and they took it down.
Correct, correct.
Why'd they take it down?
Good question.
Yeah. Okay.
You look that up. All right, so basketball pavilions. So it looks like for now, we're going to leave basketball courts in Tier 3. And we can talk some, are we okay leaving that there? Do you want to have a discussion about the pavilions, about some kind of coverage, sun coverage?
That's getting Cadillac now. It's
Yeah.
like, that I'm thinking, have them covered. They can play without.
Old school.
Yeah, to me.
Yeah. All right. So there may be some interest in this, but we're going to move on for now. So the golf course. Lots of talk about the golf course. It's been very mixed opinions. So just to try and kickstart this discussion, we've got a few options here for you. Which of this best represents your preference? For those in the audience, that's first, move the golf course, move the full golf course renovations, about $19 million, into Tier 1. Move only the partial golf course renovations, we've talked about that, the $14 million, into Tier 1. So remember that improves drainage, but you've heard from head of recreation that doesn't really improve the playability, right, of the course. Then leave it in Tier 2 for now and highlight the committee's mixed feelings at the open house, so you'd get feedback from the public before making a decision. Or move the golf course to Tier 3, or just move the golf course to a separate proposition so that it stands alone and you kind of let folks. So those aren't all mutually exclusive. We can have some discussion about this if you want, but we want to really start seeing where you land.
You know, we're voting on this, but you know, just like the discussion we had about all the possibilities of economic development downtown, all the pros, all the things that add to it. And I know everybody in here is probably not a golfer, and those of us who try to play probably not much of a golfer. But the fact of the matter is not so much people play, but it's the attraction of the community for people coming in doing a multitude of other different things. And people want to have, you know, golf
Opportunities, you're saying.
Added. Now, I know for a fact that, you know, there are a lot of times you can't even play at Terrell because they do have a number of tournaments that come in there as poorly as the condition is right now anyway, you know. So I'm just really wondering, have we answered all the questions? Have we put it out there as what the true potential could be with a very good municipal course? I know there are other courses in the community, but I'm just wondering, you know, have we really sold the concept of it?
First, good question. Second, I know you've got another engagement, have to leave. No, the only question is, do you feel comfortable, maybe we can talk offline if you want. I just want to be able to represent as you leave. Do you feel comfortable in the direction that the committee's headed? If we go to the open house, anybody's leaving early, that's really what I want to get for you. You feel comfortable about the direction we're headed? Thank you.
I'm going to stay to see what we come up with.
Okay, I didn't mean to, I know anybody who's got to leave, feel free. I just want to get that on record. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, I just wanted you to know, in the 149,000 visitors, 22% were tagged at Cattell Marsh, 19% were tagged at Terrell Park, and 11% were tagged at where Botanical Gardens is. So we won't be able to actually tag who was on that golf course, but it's still a good indicator of those visitor counts.
Great information.
So, to Christina's point, I had a member of the community ask, and I didn't know the answer based on the line item that I see in our budget. Is there any drainage or other improvements being made for the botanical gardens in the Terrell Park budget? Is there somebody from the city that could help answer if there's any improvements slated for, that would benefit the botanical gardens?
Okay, drainage improvements that would benefit.
Really, any improvements?
Or any improvements to the
Lighting,
botanical gardens.
Lighting, drainage, whatever.
Kenneth, you want to take, Joey, could you get Kenneth the mic? I'm sorry. Or I can. He's got the mic, okay.
There was no study done on the botanical garden.
Is there a reason why?
I think the main reason why is the city, it's leased out. We do own the property, but it's run by another organization. So that's why the consultant didn't go in and really do a study there, because it's not really run by the city. Actually, I think we may be doing some lighting at this point right now inside of the botanical garden the city is doing. Kenny can probably talk a little more on that because facilities maintenance is taking care of that.
Could you talk into the mic so everybody can hear?
I would love to hear more about that personally, because I got 2 specific citizen inquiries about any improvements that would be made at the botanical gardens in light of the other improvements in Terrell Park. That would be really helpful for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I too got a few calls on the botanical gardens.
I got a letter from the president. Yeah, so it's.
So when we talk about the botanical gardens improvements, those line items they're pretty fleshed out, so there's not any money that could easily be, there's not leftover money in there to be moved over. We'd be talking about additional money, or do you think there might be something?
Well, I would just add that, the plan presented for Terrell Park is not finalized. And so if it was a successful item on the bond vote, that could be up for discussion, I would think.
Sure, absolutely.
As Kenneth knows, I served on the Parks Master Plan Committee, and in one of our sessions, we discussed the possibility of renovations to some of our parks through grants. Has that been tapped into in regards to this golf course? Because from what I understand, there's opportunity there.
Jimmy?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, the question is, did you hear the question is grants for the golf course?
If there are any, we don't know any, we haven't acquired any information that says that.
Is there an opportunity to explore that prior to us maybe making a decision on how to vote?
Yeah, let me address it this way. What I would say from what I take out of this, the two highest numbers there are put the golf course on a separate renovation, on a separate proposition, and take it to the open house. So I guess what I would suggest right now, the way I would read that, and you all correct me if I'm getting it wrong, I think we would take this to the open house and say, hey, the committee is really considering this. Right now, they really want some more public feedback on this. There's some real economic, we're trying to explain that, right? There's some economic development considerations. There's local recreation considerations. And the committee's considering whether to call this or perhaps calling it as a standalone proposition. And we'd like your feedback. Then in the meanwhile, that would give staff some time to look further if there are any grants available. But I think I'm hearing you say that you have looked and you're not aware of any grants that would really help fund the golf course.
Yes, sir, we've looked. If there was something that we thought we could get, we would have definitely already jumped on it.
So does what I've described, does that work for the committee then? This goes to the open house and we say, hey, this might be a standalone proposition, but we're still thinking about it. We want to hear from you. And we'll be asking people, what do you think of the whole direction that the committee's taking? But we have the ability to highlight a few items on some boards and in the virtual voting and say, we want you to pay particular attention to the golf course. What do you think?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Good idea.
Give it a fair
Yeah.
shot.
Pardon me? I think, yeah, so we'll keep that in tier 2 for now as a maybe, but we'll highlight that at the open house with this option of maybe a standalone. Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Are you comfortable with moving forward the open house with Parks and Recs where it stands? That doesn't mean that you're going to come back July 22nd, but the question is, with what we've got in Parks and Rec right now, and maybe we want to have some discussion first. I mean, we've talked about a few other little things, but I haven't heard anything really rise up. So when I say going right now, when I say going to the open house and saying, here's what Parks and Recs is, that would be the things that are in tier 1. And we might mention some of the others, but we really wouldn't highlight anything that's in tier 2 except for the golf course. So we'd make a point of saying they're also considering the golf course. Here's some of the other projects out there that might get mentioned. But the only thing that we'd really be talking to the community directly about would be tier 1 and the golf course.
I'm comfortable with that, but I would again recommend that we be prepared at that open house to describe what benefits will be for the botanical gardens, because that organization is energized and they will come with those questions.
Great. Joey, can I get you just to make a note of that, botanical
I
gardens?
mean, I hear you, Chris, when you say, we can decide how to spend it after we get the bond, but they will be asking that question at the open house, so I recommend we come with the answers.
Great.
Could I ask, because we're kind of scratching our heads back here because I don't know that a lot of those questions have been communicated to city staff. So if that way we could be prepared and not just, and be able to have a meaningful discussion.
Yeah, I think drainage and lighting were mentioned to me. They sent a letter to Arthur as well, so you may want to reach out to them, maybe walk the grounds and see what would be their requests.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what we were not aware, but we can do that. But I did want to throw out there, Kenneth alluded to, we were able to salvage some of the lights from the Maury Myers Bridge, and some of them were repurposed to add illumination at the botanical gardens.
Right.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
So I want to make sure we're all on the same page here before we move on. Staff, what we would, if I'm hearing correctly, right, what we would say is there is a plan for Terrell Park. It's got a lot of pricing done. It's got a lot of suggestions. It is not a finalized plan. We're still moving around, so there's a real plan with some real dollars, but there is the ability to move some of those dollars around, and we're still working through that. And staff will be looking at these and other improvements, including botanical gardens and other things, and that will be decided if the bond passes. And that would give the folks at Botanical Gardens a chance to really come to the Parks Board maybe, or staff, or wherever the appropriate venue is, and make those arguments. We all good with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then the question is, are you ready to move forward?
Yes.
To the open house? So we've got 9 say yes. That may be what's left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I think there we go, 11. All right, great.
Got to vote. I did. I was a little late.
All right.
In the botanical garden.
Facilities.
Gardens.
This lady's serious.
I don't want to go
right
home
here.
and
This
get in
lady-
trouble.
Yeah, she wrote a dissertation.
All right. We've had a lot of discussion about this. Keeping in mind that the facility plan would address all facilities, including the police department. How do you feel here? First option is, I think we should put the facility study in the bond as a way to make progress toward the police station and other long-range facility improvements, which really means deferring the police station to later. Or I think the needs for the police station are so urgent that we put it on the bond ballot now, even though we don't have the tight budget numbers.
Can I ask a silly question? Have we ever thought about existing buildings and taking existing buildings, chief, of what's left in Beaumont, no, left in Beaumont. For example, the Sears and Roebuck building, I'm telling off on my age now when I say Sears and Roebuck. But I just happened to go in it a couple of days ago, so, and it's 69,000 square feet of bulletproof glass.
So we've looked at other buildings before. We actually did a tour of the Century Bank, I believe it was several years ago. What we've run into is the problem is not acquiring the building, it's the cost to remediate and then remodel. So, plus the acreage that we need for the campus size with parking, with the number of vehicles we have, is also problematic. I'm not saying that it's not doable, but we haven't seen a building available that would really fit the needs. When you look at campus size needs, as well as the square footage, which, so 100,000 square feet.
So 100,000 square feet, so you need you're looking for 7 or 8 acres of land.
Minimum, I
10
believe,
acres.
10 was what we really need, unless, if you start getting below 10, 9, 10, then you need to look at go up with parking, which just multiplies the cost.
So just a reminder on this, I think we're already getting some voting, but, right, I think the police departments, and Kenny have really made the case that the police department desperately needs, over time, some new facilities that they can't really, that this was not designed for the size. On the other side, as we've discussed, right, we have some fairly good generic costs, but we don't have detailed costs or a program or plan for exactly where that expansion is going to be or how it's going.
I have a question. Police,
Yes, sir.
so when you say it's crowded, do y'all have different shifts? Or is this at one time, or how does that work?
I'm sorry?
They're in various buildings, right? Right now, your people are split up, is that?
Yes, I know that piece, but I'm talking about the main facility. So is it crowded? Do you have different shifts in that one building?
Oh,
Is it
yes.
crowded or-
So the downtown building that we have now, we utilize parking in all 3 parking lots. That's not to mention the people that we have parked at the other 5 facilities that we're having to operate out of. So if you move everybody, for instance, we have a fleet, our fleet is 130, 150 vehicles. So people drive to work, they have to park. We have 300 plus employees. So then we have our fleet that we maintain there, they get in their car and they go do their work. So at any one time, you've got that many vehicles parked.
So you talking more about parking, or are you talking about the facility?
A lot, so for the facility and the needed parking, we're looking at around 10 acres that we would need to have a reasonable campus size.
Okay, all right.
So just remember that we'll be combining all of the other things that we're paying, building maintenance, rent, everything else on. We'll be combining almost all of that into one building.
Gotcha.
We did have a conference call with Kenny and an architect last week, and the numbers that we were talking about, obviously without having the opportunity to have gotten a facility study before we did this, the numbers are pretty close to what we were talking about last week. And again, just a reminder that, with inflation costs, with a number this big,
Oh, yeah.
this is the biggest number of inflation that you're looking at going up in the future.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay,
hope y'all consider that.
thank you.
All right, so I think there's some indication to go with facilities plan, so if it continues to move towards the facilities plan, that develops programming ideas, budgets. Those budgets might have to be updated, but at least you'd have fully realized budgets going forward. And that, all right. Are we going to, so for now then, we're taking, I think it's clear that everybody, I've heard everybody in here say they think the police station is important, but we're going to get the facilities plan done first and then move towards the police station. Yeah, so that's good. So the police station moves to tier 3 again, not that it's not needed, but not on this bond. I don't know that we need this. We were going to say, so the facility study, I think that question answered it, unless we can take this if you want. Implicit in that other question was that we would do the facility study. Is there anybody who doesn't want to do the facility study? We don't do either.
Can you refresh our memory on the pricing of the facility study? Was that the one that was 500,000?
500,000.
I didn't really
Right.
understand.
Kenny, what, it was maybe, I think it was a little bit less, but I think we rounded up to 500. Okay. Thank you, Kara. 550.
I don't know much about that world, so I would probably need some help with why the study cost that much.
Let me jump in, and then I'll have staff jump in, just because I've been involved in a lot of those. So you would we've got an architect on here as well, but typically you would have some people who come in and do space studies for the different departments. So not just the police station, but the departments all over the city. I think the chief said he thought theirs might be 60 to 50 to 100,000. It kind of depends on the level of detail. So typically you would look at how many employees you're going to have in the future. You'd assign some, well, I'll let the architect jump in.
Sort of, it's different tiers. So the first thing is we do an interview with the client and find out what their needs are currently, and then sort of down the road what those needs might be, so we can make a best guess at what we think the facility should be. Then there's an analysis of your existing facilities to see if the reorganization of those facilities or the moving of people would accommodate your needs and for how long. And then the third part is looking at a brand new facility and saying, if we're going to build a brand new facility and we want it to be good for a certain period of time in the future, this is what that would be. So there's a lot of time. It just takes, and that's why they're so expensive.
That makes sense. And you may not feel comfortable saying this. For those that do have experience in these, does this amount sound right? It does? Okay.
Well, I mean, first off, you got to know where you're at. Then you got to know where you're going. And then you got to figure out if you can go there with the facilities that you have, or if you can't go there with the facilities that you have, what do you need to have?
And then it's going to determine how many facilities we're actually looking at as well. I mean, because we could be looking at 30, 50 facilities. So going in and actually doing a comprehensive evaluation on every facility, looking at every repair that needs to be made, creating a list of those repairs, coming up with a facility condition index, which pretty much says the cost of repair is this based on the cost of replacement, using that, and then incorporating that into a facility master plan, which is like a long-range roadmap that ties us into the strategic plan. So it can get pretty expensive because, like you said, when you're doing these type of evaluations, we're calling in the Labishas, which is architects. We're involving engineers, and all of their costs to come in and evaluate HVAC system, roofing system, plumbing system, building facade, ADA compliance, looking at work order history, and then combining that information and creating a cost that's going to give us, should we repair, should we renovate, or should we do a new construction. So
That's helpful. I just think anytime that we're spending that amount of money on paper, we need to be sure that all of us understand it and can advocate for that.
And Jeff, if I can just add on to that real quickly, when we were, several years ago at City Hall, we did a similar city study just for City Hall. When we were thinking, hey, we need more space, we're running out of room for basically the people we have, the efficiency study came back and said, hey, you've got all these files, and basically they came in and we gained a lot of space, and so it may translate to, hey, maybe we don't need, I'm not saying police, but other buildings, hey, maybe we don't need another or bigger building here, we can just do it better.
And just so we're clear, when we're talking to folks, as we're saying 500,000 for the facility study, we're not just talking about the police station. This is all city facilities.
This is all potential dozens of city facilities potentially. And I would just second that. You know, I would be shocked if it came in under 400. So I think anywhere in that kind of 400 to 600 or 700,000 range. So 550 seems like a good number to be careful. And you're going to have some pretty detailed cost estimates and comparisons in there.
And just to remind you this, by saying that you want to do this facility study before you're getting started on doing a police station, we're pushing that thing that's gonna be pushed down the road 6 years. It isn't like it's gonna happen like that, and then we're gonna have the money. But, so, that's one reason why I personally think that we ought to let the citizens decide if we need a new police department. I think typically and traditionally across the board, police department things, fire department things sit very well with voters because they feel like, yes, we're making it safer, not only for ourselves, but for our kids and looking into the future. That's why I hate to push this police station so far down the road. I mean, right now what we got is we got a 50 Chevrolet driving a SpaceX rocket. Because Real-Time Crime Lab, I mean, I was fortunate enough to design it. It is unbelievable. We've only hit the tip of what they're doing in that facility right now. But they can't do it in the facilities. They've got health problems in the police department building, constant flooding. I mean, constant flooding in a police department building. And guess what? Where it floods, that's where they bring people in. That's where the employees arrive to. I mean, I was by there the other day, and there were people walking through a foot of water to get in that building because they just got to get there from where they're going.
And I would like to, and I'm with you, but I've had multiple people come to me about their concerns of not knowing what it's going to cost. That's why my question was, what are we talking about? Are we talking about closer to 50, talking 100? Because I've heard all of these numbers. And it's just like going to a car lot, trying to buy a car. They're not putting the sticker on the car. You know, that's what the concerns that I've heard. That's what I'm interested in.
Well, realize too that the police department has been talking to firms that's all they do. And with all building projects, we can keep guessing at what it's cost. Sooner or later, we got to say, no, this is all that we're going to spend. And I think if we ask the voters, we got to say, we're going to build a new police department, and this is our budget for it. And we got to live,
Right.
and the police department's got to live inside of there, and that means an acre less land, then it means an acre less land.
Right.
If it means that we got to push a little something down the road, but not push the whole thing down the road.
Can we add to the bond, have a separate, at the same time where we're voting on the police department, kind of separate from the rest of the bond?
Not exactly, but you could have different propositions, so one could fail and not. So you'd have, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Don's right. I think you're going to get a lot of citizens to get on board for a police department that's going to be up to date with the crime lab, and then all the cameras we're adding and everything else. You know, I'm going to be like I'm watching NCIS every night, so here in Beaumont, and I'm going to be happy with that because I like NCIS, and they take care of their business. So I am a police person. I've never been a police person, but I mean, I like supporting the police department, and I think we need a police. It's a lot of money. I've heard it from some of the people in the city of Beaumont that it's a lot of money, but you know what? My safety's pretty important to me. And the first person you're looking to when you have a problem, a prowler or something, you're calling the police department, and I'd like to be able to call them and get them out pretty quick.
Sam, I'm a police person too, and I totally hear what you're saying, but my thoughts on that is what we can do is what we have. If it's $75 million or $80 million, that's a large sum of money. And if we don't have that money, how can we provide that as well as we need it? So I'm going on both sides. I'm listening to it, and we all have our feelings about it. But the only thing we can work with as a bond committee is the monies that we have. And that's where I'm at.
So I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say you're at somewhere at the $11 to $12, right? $11.50 per month without the police station. If you add the police station we'll have to get the FA to put it in exactly, but you're probably jumping that up to $15 to $16 a month.
It's a small price to pay.
And that would give us 300 plus million?
So that would, we could get 290 million. We did calculate that, which comes close to the police station, and that'd be about $15.50 a month. So you're talking about, it's 4 and change, 4 and a quarter, 450, something like that. Now, again, we don't have an exact number for the police station, but if we take this kind of rough number that we've been talking about of $75 million.
It was like 75. It was 75. Yeah. It was 75.
So while we haven't had the study done, we didn't have a chance to get it done. We, in our conversation with the architect last week, and I think Kenny will agree with kind of what we walked away with, is she felt that 95 would, plus the land, that's not counting the land, 95 would get everything. She felt really confident with that number. And what she's doing really is looking at comparable builds that they've done. They just let Plano, they did Georgetown a while back. There's other more comparable size departments that they've done, and that's really what she was going on. But when you look at the construction costs where they're building, we're hopeful that the construction costs may not be quite that high here. So you're looking at some places she's built at $750 a square foot. That was the number she gave, right, Kenny? $750. You know, and Kenny, what do you think? Maybe we might be able to get away with $650, $6. We just don't know that. But what we do know is that that number, they felt fairly confident that they could get us everything that we needed for that number.
So,
exclusive of the land.
In talking to Sam, he was saying, you know, what, I don't know Beaumont land prices, but he was saying maybe somewhere in a $6 a foot range. So that translates into something like $250,000 an acre. So you'd be, so land might be another $2 to $3 million. Does that sound right? On top of that.
So we're talking about something that's close to $100 million now, right?
You're talking about something, sounds like close to. So $100 million, so that's probably more like, you know, that's probably more like $6, real rough numbers, because it's complicated calculations, but real rough numbers, something like $6 per household per month on a $150,000 house.
So I'm also 1,000% police person, my family and things like that. I would say, and I love the idea of putting it to the voters one way or the other because they can choose. We're not the ones making the decision. But I will say that I think that if it goes on the bond, a lot of thought needs to be put into what the justifications are. Because, for example, the safety justification that you brought up, I think is much more compelling because I think people want to protect our policemen, but that wasn't a justification that we heard before. We also asked the question about whether or not technology would be more advanced. And I think the answer is yes, but we need a lot. I think if you're going to say $100 million from people, I think we got to build up why it's safer for the officers and not just for retention and for recruitment, because a lot of businesses have that problem. You know, technology, I think we would just really have to put together a package to explain to people why it's worth $100 million. I think our policemen are worth $100 gazillion billion, but before we ask people to pay another, 50, 60% more per month, I think by the time we get to the open house or to the bond, we just have to have a whole lot of meat behind it.
Yeah, agreed. I was going to say, I think the mindset of the voters is in the absence of value, the only thing that matters is price. So we got to be compelling enough to where that money, like I think Joe was saying, that my safety, there's no amount, that's worth that. But from the average standpoint of a voter, I think, again, in the absence of value, they're just going to see that dollar and be like, exit. I mean, it's just my thought.
And I think just to keep in mind, it's really not pro or con, but just to think about it. So you're going to be think about news reports are going to have the total value of the bond, and then they're going to break it down, but they're going to say, oh, Beaumont's looking at a $200 million or a $300 million bond, right? Now, when people walk into the ballot box, into the booth, they're going to see those broken down, and there's going to be a list of 6 or 5 or 4. So then they're going to judge them individually, but they're also going to judge them kind of cumulatively, right? Because when you're voting and you voted on 2 or 3 and you say, well, I've spent a lot of money now I'm in a bad mood, right, about these other ones. So that's not to speak to what the priorities. Maybe the priority is police over something else, or maybe they all get passed. It's really just informational in our experience. Like you're going to have, there's 2 or 3 issues there. Something might, if you have a lot of propositions and you're at 300 million, our experience is then sometimes people look for, well, I want to vote against something. I don't want to give them everything they ask for.
And I think everybody's bringing up very good points. I think everybody here is pro-police. Yeah. We need them. We appreciate them. But at the same time, when there's been flooding in the community for the past 2 weeks, people perceive there to be a crime problem in the city, and we aren't addressing those. That's what the concern is. But they'll see the police want a $100 million building, but we still are having issues in this city. What is that going to do to make me safer?
Exactly.
We want to give money to a golf course, but we're still having flooding in my neighborhood, and my toilet is still backing up. That's why I think we have to be very careful in how we message and package this for that reason. Absolutely. Because we could be in a position where it could bomb everything because they think we're not really listening to their concerns. That's my only issue.
That's why that open house is so imperative.
So at the open house, let's talk about this for a second then. Do we want to bring up the police station at all at the open house? Yeah. Or do we want to say that, hey, the committee's been looking at open house right now, they're concerned about they
Absolutely.
are really concerned about the police needs, but also concerned about the price tag. How do you feel as a community? Is that
we're concerned about how to make all this fit, man.
right?
We're just trying to figure out how to the most top priority things, how to make everything fit. Again, you have so much in your bank account. That's
right.
all we got. And so how to do that, and everybody else has different opinions, the people that's coming through. But I definitely think we need to, at the open house, have this police station. That's definitely, most definitely, high priority.
So, Mr. Chairman, I hear you saying, and I hear a lot of you kind of nodding, or I heard a lot of you say, yes, it is an issue that you want to at least bring up at the open house to highlight some, right?
Yes, so we don't, like initially we said, we're gonna get to that later.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think I'm hearing you, right? Anybody?
I also think it's important, if you're going to have it part of an open house, to have some determination as to where this police station would actually be located. You know, it may not sound like much, but people want to know where. You know, because we don't have a clue right now as to where they would possibly be located, and I think that's important.
My guess, I don't know. Maybe Kenny or the police need to address that. My guess is that's hard to do because there's going to be some kind of land negotiation, and if you name a price and if you name a place and say we're definitely going there, that affects the negotiation.
Well,
How many developers
I'm not saying
have
a
we
certain
looked at?
street or whatever, but
What area? Got it. I see. I hear you.
New growth development. Are we going back to Old Town? I mean, I think there needs to be some indication. People, for some reason or not, have a tendency to relate police response to where they're located. And
Gotcha.
That's not always the case.
Right.
And it seems like sometimes it's almost a better deal when the police station is spread out, when they had all the various substations all over the place. People really felt a little bit safer because they knew right over here's a police substation, over here's a police substation, and I don't know if we have any anymore. But, I mean, those are just some of the things that we need to think about. But you said something that was very key. If we are not careful and we ask people to go into place a vote, and we're talking about $300 million, something that may be very well needed, is gonna get cut out because
Absolutely.
people always believe that the more money you have, the more you're gonna spend. So we have to be very, very careful with how we continue the packages and giving people so many options, vote for this or don't vote for this. Sooner or later, it's gonna be in another situation where it's gonna be people against people, which should be something positive.
All right.
Jeff, how many
Please.
developers have we looked at?
How many developers for, like, with land for the
For the
police
police
station?
station.
I don't know the answer to that. Kenny, or the police station, can y'all talk about how far you are with negotiations with land, or if you're looking at several different places? Do you have a general area in mind? Have you talked to multiple developers or multiple landowners?
We've looked at multiple locations, but as of right now, would be to be determined. Like you said, it could be a location that we're looking at right now, and about time that this bond comes up, that location is gone, it's been sold. So like they mentioned, it's really difficult to say exactly where it would be at. So with the amount of land that's needed, there's possible 10 acres. There's only certain areas that you can,
Right. That has 10 open acres.
or like I said, even less than that for us to work with it and build a parking structure. But it's really hard to determine and say exactly where it's going to be at this moment. And I'm gonna let Assistant Chief, if you want to speak.
Well, I think, like has been said by several people, it's a little inappropriate to talk locations, but I think, like the mayor mentioned, there is concern that it's appropriately located. So obviously, our goal would be to aim as central as possible, but there is a space issue that would have to be taken into account. And I think there's people at the table, y'all's table, more knowledgeable about land than us.
I was talking about the price of construction,
So the builders,
not necessarily the land, but.
not the land, but different firms. Are you locked into one firm at this point?
Be bidded out. I mean, one firm.
It would be bidded, this would go out to RFP, to a request for proposal, which is like a bid for professional services, I assume, right?
But he mentioned, she said.
Well, we are not locked in. We did, based on the conversation
Yeah.
that we had at the last meeting, we did reach out to one architect firm that we have talked to before. We talked to several a couple of years ago when we were in St. Louis. All of the information that they gave is very consistent across firms. And again, this was just very rough information that we had because we happened to have a contact with this company, but it would, when we were ready, it would go out on an RFP, and then, an architect would be chosen that way. So what we wanted to try to bring back was, without doing the study, try to get you people as firm a number as we could, so you would know as close as possible what you're asking for. And so that, that's kind of where we are. And to your comment, we would happily do, whatever presentation that we needed to do. Basically, all we've been asked so far is just to come be here to answer questions.
So the numbers, again, I think the original number that we started with was 59 million based on some previous information the city had collected. We inflated that up to about 75. So just a reminder, so it sounds like that would be probably close to 100 when we include the land, based on what we've heard tonight.
You brought up a very good point I didn't consider. The original number proposed was 59, with the contingencies and the other considerations added to the 75. So with the 100 we just heard, does that take in consideration the contingency, the inflation? So is it more than 100 now?
Well, I would say that they may have some, I think the options would be, as you heard Mr. Levish say, is maybe you just set a budget and say, well, this is how much we've got. But from our perspective, yeah, based on the numbers we've heard, we're the ones that suggested the contingency just based on a lot of experience with these kinds of things. And then is not an inflated number.
Okay.
So you would have inflation over 1 to 2 to 3 years before some of that got built. 'Cause you're going to have to do engineering plans and architecture plans first, so it'd be probably higher than
So by our next meeting with the potential number of what now we at least have an idea. I know it may be less, maybe more. Could we get the contingency, the potential inflation, so we have a clearer number that would be proposed as a budget?
Maybe Kenny and the police department could work with administration, and we'll be glad to work with you guys to think about, is that got a big enough contingency? How much, or where do you want to just draw the line and say, hey, that's the budget, and it is what it is? There does need to be something in there for land. And I think, Sam, you were saying just roughly somewhere $6 a foot is probably the price that's going to get paid for this, right? So 43,560 feet in an acre, so 6 times 43, you're more or less $250,000 an acre. 10 acres, 2.5 million, maybe 3 to be cautious, needs to be thrown in there for land. We'll be glad to work with you guys, but I think if we put this on open house, we're going to want to get a good solid number and a description of what that might include, right? We know we don't have a study, right? So we don't really know what your needs might be, but maybe some projection about officers. And there's a lot, Kenny, in the presentation you gave, but if we're going to put that out, we're going to want to get as specific as possible in the open house and what this might buy.
And Chief, what I would do is you have this relationship with this company that does these all the time. See if they'll share with you some pictures and some floor plans of what you would need so that at least somebody could come up and look at it and go, oh, okay, well, I didn't realize you need that much space for this or that much space for that. But that might help the whole cause so that somebody can kind of see, well, it's going to be similar to this, needs to be a similar size city, similar size population. We can't use a College Station that's got more people than we do. So the population, the city's got to be very similar so that we can say, okay, Abilene just did one. They're the same size as us, and this is what they did. So it all has to stack up because we've got to defend it every time somebody says, well, that's Round Rock. Well, Round Rock's a lot bigger than Beaumont, Texas, a lot more people, so I guess they did need more. So we can't have that.
We need to understand it better.
Right.
To make a decision.
Exactly.
To put up front.
And to put that in the open house, we're going to need that within a week, because putting together those boards and the virtual presentation is pretty complex to distill that all down.
Just as a reminder that in-person open house is on July 12th, but actually the open house opens to the public
Next
on
Friday.
So
The open house begins July 4th, the virtual part, and today's the 25th.
Fifth.
So
Next Friday.
we're already glad to have it. But if anything you can get us, tomorrow is really too late. It can be a few days from now for sure, but we need anything as fast as possible because we will be starting tomorrow really intensively working on that open house.
I think it would be helpful too, maybe to show some pictures of some of the problems that you've described and that Mr. LaBeach described, because it's difficult to imagine, I think, if you haven't been in the station, like most of the voters won't have been.
So in the spirit of compromise, I had an idea. So if I was going to this open house and I looked at this proposal and I saw a number of 100 million, 110 million, doesn't matter about the number, is there a way that we can have brackets in a sense where a voter can say, I can see myself voting on a proposition that is, say, $50 million. I can see myself voting on 75, or I would go up to 100 million. And like we're doing here, let the voters speak on which tier they would be willing to say, I would say yes to that. And then we use that number as leverage, per se, to go out to prospective builders and say, look, this is what we got. Make it work.
How much money we have in the bank.
So really interesting. Different philosophy, right? You want to try and take care of you guys have said it'd be really nice to take care of everything at once, that it's hard to do only a partial build, but that's the question. Could if you got, maybe it's at least two tiers, it was 70 million and 110 million, is that workable though?
Well, I'm thinking this.
I don't know, I think some interest but hesitancy from your police department about that.
I'm thinking this. 100 million gonna shock somebody.
Yeah.
Say, well, number 70, 72, 70. Oh, coach, we can breathe now. Yeah, we with that. I mean, we're not lying to them when you say 100 million.
Right.
But people, most people, you know, that's shock. Sticker shock at 100, and it's real. But at 70, we may have to, the city of Beaumont, need to make that 70 million work. Build it to that what we have in the bank. That's my thought.
I just don't want an immediate no whenever this is so important. And if the citizens say we can see going 50, 60 million, I would vote all day on that. Then at least we have a number, something that's tangible that we can work with. Because immediately somebody seeing that the toilets are stopped up or the drainage is, they're going to say no right off the bat. 100 million, no. My neighborhood's too busted up.
No.
I don't want it to be a no is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
That's one other thing. I'm sorry, Mr. Manager, you mind if There's one other thing. In the discussion we heard, it said this building, I think, was built in, I don't know, 1951 or whenever it was. I think it was built for, as I remember, 160 people. I think you got 100 more than that now, getting closer to 300. How spread out are we, this department, over the community? I'm sure we're paying for, you know, costs in various locations. Some of us know of other locations where they are located, but how many different locations do we have throughout the city? And my understanding, you're going to bring all this together. The community might need to understand how that all comes together and could be a benefit to them. We got to sell benefits if we're going to try to sell this whole concept, and I just don't know enough about all the pieces that's hanging out there. I heard about the flooding and the water and all that over there and the lack of parking, but it's got to be a little bit more to it than just that.
Right. And Mr. City Manager?
Here you go.
Thank you. I haven't said anything during these whole discussions. I just sit at the back of the room and listen, but I think on this one I need to say some things because I have had experience of building a new police station. Last city where I was in, we put it on the ballot and we passed it and we built a new police station. So I'm in favor of getting a new police station, getting some things done. But it's imperative that you do it the right way. I think you have some trouble if you just put a dollar amount out there and say, we're going to build it to that. You know, you're going to have something that's incomplete, something that's not usable, and something you'll be going back to the voters asking for more money before long again. I'd say, you know, no matter you put it on the ballot and it passes, or you don't put it on the ballot, but I would not contemplate building a station without a facility study. If that's after you pass it on the ballot, let it pass on the ballot. But you don't build a facility like that without a facility study, knowing you got to put it to the number of your officers, the programs you have in place, the things you have. It's got to fit, and it's got to be for 30 years. These things are not for now. You've got to make this last for 30 years for your department. So putting on the ballot and it passes, that's fine. But I would still recommend that you do a facility study at that point. You can't say it's 100 million, it's 75 million, it's 50 million. You need to know, because once you put these dollars on the ballot, you are married to those dollars. They can only be spent on that project. You can't transfer them and spend them on the street project, sorry. So putting it on there, passing it, fine, whatever. But I would not do this project without a facility study of some sort.
So I think that's, we were talking about facility studies. You know, I know some of you don't have familiarity with that, but it really does give you a lot of good information to make smart decisions. Now, I think I hear the city manager saying if you decide you want to go forward with a police station, there's nothing that says you couldn't do a facility study, and then instead of waiting to find the money later, you've you've already passed some money, it gets into this difficult question that we have talked a lot about, then what is that figure that you put in there? So I think what I hear you saying, let me see if I can sum up where we are as a group. I think what I've heard is we want to go to the open house and we want to tell people that the committee is leaning towards recommending a facility study, look at facilities across the city, including the police station. And that the committee is leaning strongly toward that. That in addition to that, the committee recognizes that police is an urgent need. Right. So that you are really thinking about whether we would do the facility study needs to be done first. So the committee is struggling with and wants input from the community about then whether we would also put some kind of number on the police station that's large enough to accommodate whatever's needed. Or do we do the facility study and come back with another bond soon or something else soon to try and do the police station and hear where the public is?
How long do those studies usually take?
I would say 6 to 9 months, something like that. Maybe 6 months as a city manager.
I think you're right, 6 to 9. You know, people these days like that specialize in things aren't sitting around with like, oh, I've got nothing to do, so when you call me today, I can start today. So sometimes it takes some transition period depending on where they're located, when can they come down, depending on where they're located, when they can get down, when they can start to study. But you can certainly tell them, you know, we're going to take proposals on people doing this study, and it's got to be done by this date. And people give you proposals, and people that don't send you a proposal can't do it by that date.
So again, the numbers that we have in here, because that was the early, we knew there was going to be a lot of discussion about that. From what we've heard and just looking at the numbers and where we were, we presumed no police station now, and that's your original vote. So that's the numbers we've got. If we want to add it in this bond, then we're kicking it up $4, $5, $6 per month on a $150,000 home. But how does that sound? What I described, that we're going to what I'm hearing from you is yes. At the open house, again, we would say there's going to be a facility study. The police station, we recognize there's a need. The committee's not sure whether that would be on this bond or on some future bond. And it's pretty expensive, and we don't have hard numbers yet, but we do have some good estimates. And the committee is interested in public feedback.
That's true. That's accurate.
Yeah. I think we need to let the people speak on that. It's important.
Okay.
You given a scenario, what to take place.
Okay. All right. Then that's how we'll. Mr. City Manager, does that sound like a reasonable approach to you?
I think it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Because we're bringing it back to the people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then that's, Kara, you got that? Joey, you got that? All right. All right. Let's.
Without Xing it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want it to be a no.
Don't let them.
Okay. I'm going to just skip this question if you're okay, because I think we've talked this through. We're good. Please raise your hand if you've got any concerns about going forward to the open house with the facilities plan that we've discussed.
We can skip it.
All right, let's do infrastructure. Thanks for hanging in there with us. All right, we talked about 2 segments of Dowland Road last time around and really breaking that into 3 segments. You heard Christina talk about that. Molly is still here. Hey, Molly. So I think we're, and we want to get a sense from you. We can talk this through or we can do it in the Mentimeter. Really, we want to know which of these segments. You heard Christina talk about economic development value. Last time, you put one of the roads in tier 1 and wanted to have more discussion about the other, we've now broken those into additional segments for you. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Good. While people are voting, Molly, is there anything you want to add?
I've been working with my staff, and we have been developing the cost estimates, breaking out what we originally presented from College to Walden into College to Washington, Washington to Walden. So we just finished wrapping those up. So I guess my question would be if I share this with Gap Strategies tomorrow, the next day, if that's something that you would be able to share perhaps with the committee?
We can share with the committee, or we can also, I think, share that at the open house, at least about some, we can share it with the committee, but I will say we'd like to make as many decisions tonight as we can, because the time to get ready for that open house is going to be short. So I see couple of people still to vote. And it is, Walden to I-10. Well, it's all evening out. That's 10, I believe that's everybody. So, oops, oh, one more, okay. So high threes. So let's have a little bit of, we better have a little discussion about this, I guess. Where are we? These, right now, Joey, help me. I believe all of these roads are in the numbers we're using. Is that correct? Yes, we just broke out on the street. Great. So they're broken out. So when we talk about the dollar amount right now, if you want to cut out a road, you're coming down off that 1150. I mean, the police department complicates it, but that 1150. So, I mean, 4 would be, yes, I think these are important. These are just shy of that. What's the general consensus? Would we put these, I guess I would say this is close enough to 4 tentatively that, yeah, we put this on the bond. Roads ranked number 1 in community interest. Now that, there's a question there about whether that's road maintenance or new roads, right? But infrastructure ranked high. How do we feel? So just to get us started, Tier 1, does this go to the open house as Tier 1 and say we want to hear what you think about it? I'm seeing some nods. Anybody disagree with that?
I think that this is, of all the projects we've talked about, this one comes closest to paying for itself of all of the stuff.
Paying for itself because new development is likely to happen, you think?
Taxes, new development, all of those things. And it'll help some of our congestion on Dowling Road because some of that will move farther down. It'll also help our congestion on Major Drive right now because of the things that we're seeing with highway construction right now.
I think to piggyback off of what he was saying is that we can't just spend it as an infrastructure improvement because people are going to think, well, traffic flow, they can just go to Major or they can hit I-10. This is a huge opportunity for economic development because of the 3 corners or 4 corners that potentially could bring immense commercial development to our area. That needs to be really heavily hit.
Highlighted in the open house. Okay? All right. I'm not trying to rush us, but I know you've all been incredibly patient. I'm going to move on unless anybody wants to debate this being in Tier 1 for now. All right, let's go. Drainage work. So this is a little complicated, all right? Before you vote, let's talk about it for just a second. Again, right now, the city has a drainage plan, And the city is funding that out of special funds and out of COs, right? So the city does have a drainage plan, but a couple of you have pointed out, for instance, that drainage is on everybody's mind right now and flooding is on everybody's mind right now. So do we want some money that just first helps supercharge some drainage and maybe also secondly symbolically is in the bond package so that people can see that it was on your mind?
My question is this. June, how much money and what is being targeted for drainage? So I'll know that we need to add this in the bond or it's taken care of or just where it is.
And Molly, I see Molly digging for some papers.
I mean, if it's already taken care of, I can say we're good. But if it's not, we're not good. We need to get good with the bond.
So in our
Let me ask them, are you ready? Just respond already?
Yeah, I'm just going to go through a few numbers. In our 5-year community investment plan, for all of the drainage-related projects, for next fiscal year 2026, we have $19.9 million allocated for projects, drainage projects. The year after that, 7.2 million in 27, 6.8 in 28, 7.1 in 29, and 7.3 million in 2030. So
Yeah, my question to that is, so I can process it, what percentage of the current drainage problems will $19 million cover?
I don't know.
It would actually be, it's kind of a limited impact. So the FY26, their lion's share is for the rehabilitation of the West Lucas Interceptor. Aside from that, then you remove that 11 million out of there, you're getting back in line with what we're currently scheduled for about $7 million per year. That includes $3.5 million and then escalated annually for inflation on our roadside ditching program. So that is addressing the roadside ditch, those streets that have roadside ditches, setting them to grade, resetting the culverts that need to be reset. For example, Avalon Street, I know that that's gotten a lot of attention in social media because of the issues that are there. Those type of projects is what is addressed there. 20% of the city per year is what we're scheduling for that. We've got some specific projects that are grant funded. In addition to that, one of the areas that we need, to assistance with is the underpasses and making those improvements.
Most definitely what I saw.
Yes, especially, this past week and a half or so has really highlighted that need. And then we have
Those underpasses, Molly, are they covered by the grant or that's unfunded need?
This is currently scheduled in the CIP.
So again,
Yeah.
for me, as I'm slow, what percentage of the master drainage problems that you get will you be able to percentage-wise? Because the reason I'm asking this is because we're asking for a lot of things. And if voters don't see that we have money for drainage on this bond, that's not good.
Yeah,
That's
so
not good.
one of the areas that we're wanting to, one of the line items that is in our CIP that can help us with general larger impact across the city is our annual stormwater inspection point repair and asset management. And so that is roughly about $2.5 to $3 million per year. And, that is really that is the bucket of money where we're going out and addressing the issues that we're identifying. So these problem areas that the recent rains have spotlighted for us, that's where that funding is coming from. And so to expand that program to have more impact across the city, that would be the bucket that we would put that in. There's opportunity to scale that up to increase our impact. The problem with drainage projects, and I want to make sure that we fully understand, is that will eat up money fast for the impacts that you have. So that's why we kind of have to be strategic in how we move forward with that, if that makes sense.
And it makes sense, but again, all these other big numbers, and people don't see drainage. But then again, some people say, the hell with that. It ain't flooding at bottom miles. I'm keeping it real.
Sure.
So those, we good. I'm good in the West End. I live in Gladys and Major. We don't flood.
But to be responsive, I mean, to the survey that we got, improving drainage citywide was the second highest
Yes, it was.
response to where would you like to see leaders put their priorities, exceeded only by maintaining roads. So if we're going to be responsive to this survey.
That's it.
And where they told us they wanted us to put their attention, 56.8 specifically mentioned drainage and don't seem to be satisfied with the current pace.
Great, we got a question here and then here.
Yeah, go ahead.
The different allocations we went through for 26, 27, 28, 29, is the money that we've spoken about already allocated to specific projects?
Most of them are, except for the stormwater pipe inspection, point repair, and data asset management. That is kind of a catch-all bucket, so that we are able to respond to issues as we identify them, as they arise. For the example, the point repair at Gladys and Lucas, when that opened up under our feet, that's, I hate to use that terminology, but that's kind of where that money is coming from, is when you identify, okay, there is a major issue here, we've got to make this repair. That's that bucket, as well as our asset management, because we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And so by improving our mapping, understanding, doing essentially a condition assessment of our underground storm sewer system, level setting where we are so that we can better plan for future, which includes the renovation, updating our drainage master plan. That's all that
Yes, ma'am.
bucket. Yes, sir.
Okay, and putting aside costs right now, I just want to get an idea of priority of projects potentially. Top 3 projects that could address citizens' concern about sewage backing up into their home. What are they?
Okay, so now that's in sanitary sewer. And so that's usually covered by our revenue bonds. So,
Can we not put something towards that on the bond?
I'm going to have to defer to.
Sewer-related projects are not typically on a bond. We have funding in the CIP for sewer-related projects, but typically those are not required to go on a bond.
I think that's kind of something important. We're going to have to make sure it's clear as this message goes out, because they're going to hear,
Absolutely.
we'll put 10, 20,
Man.
whatever the number is towards
So-
drainage and sewer, but most people, such as I, would have thought, oh, that's going to address some of the concerns, but it doesn't seem like it will.
So on the wastewater side, on the sanitary sewer side, we are scheduled for FY '26. We're proposing just shy of $27 million for FY '26. And, that includes six towards working our way up to $7 million per year for what we call our annual collection system renewal. That includes the pipe bursting. That includes the rehab projects of everything that we currently have in place. There's 400 working up towards $500,000 per year of the lift station repairs and improvements. Then we have additional projects then we start getting into the specific projects. And then we're in the process of developing our wastewater treatment plant master plan. Once that study is completed, and we expect that to be completed at the end of this calendar year, early of next year, then you will see some significant projects start to come online into the capital program. But what do they care about a wastewater plant that's on Laughlin Road when they can't flush their toilets when it is raining? And so one of the items that we're also still pushing as well is, again, that evaluation. So many of these lines, we're still pipe bursting lines that were put in the 40s and the 50s, and doing a better job of our mapping, understanding where we are so we know where we need to go. That's usually is found in that line item of the annual collection system renewal, which, like I said, that is at about just under $7 million per year.
My last point on that, so when I'm asked about this, between us in here, which means everybody in the community, does this mean that there will not be any immediate relief for those individuals in the community that are having issues with their sewage backing up into their home?
There are so many factors in every location as to why sewage is backing up into homes. And that's why it's so important to understand that particular citizen's needs. Is it just their home that is being impacted? And I can think of situations where a citizen is impacted, nobody else is, but it's not their fault. It's not because their sewer line hasn't been addressed. But then you see other areas where you've got a whole neighborhood that is having issues, and the problem is actually several blocks downstream. And so, could we do a larger management program of our sanitary sewer system? Yes, it could be done. Other cities have done it. What exactly that would look like, the bang for our buck, that is going to be something that we would have to sit down and really put pencil to paper to understand that better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The one thing I want to say is this. You never have enough money, in public works to handle these type of problems, ever, it seems. But I sat in a meeting this week for well over 2 hours listening to people very, very upset about what's happening as a result of all the flooding, can't flush their toilets. And I woke up the other morning and I smelled like methane gas coming through the plumbing at my home. Because I guess they were out there pumping trucks, but it was shooting gas back into the homes, or pumping the lines rather. So if we put all this together, and we're talking about 100 million over here and 34 million over here, and we're not doing something that looks like we are addressing the flooding, the backup sewage,
Absolutely.
the brown water, we're spinning our wheels. Because I'll tell you what, that people will be voting against this based on the fact that they don't feel they're getting anything out of it. And I do understand economics. I do understand having a sports complex. I do understand having those road extensions for further development. But we need to look at having something where if it's needed now to add additional money to fix some of these problems. Because I tell you, we all know every time it's a major rain, that's all the news carries. And they find the people with the water, with the brown water, with the back. And I know the city has made major improvements. But just out there in the north end of Beaumont, with the project that's going on now and going back over into the bottoms, those people have some real serious issues. And they're being very public about them. And I just hope that we can find some kind of way to address that, to let them know they are being heard. And if we're putting money into all these other areas, we need to look at doing something, committee, that says we're trying to address at least one of these major issues, because I'm listening to the numbers per year, because the biggest, I won't say the biggest excuse, the reason that a lot of council members give constituents is that it's not in this year's budget. We're going to get to it. And that number goes from 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to somebody saying, I've been dealing with this for 38 years. I know all that isn't just as they say, but I just want everybody on this committee to understand we have to be sensitive to that.
So Molly, let me jump in there, because I'm hearing, trying to facilitate us, it's getting late, and I'm hearing a lot of concern about that, right? And I know you're saying it's very complicated, and we have a lot of different issues at play, and you have limited project management ability within the city. But I guess what I think, summing it up, I hear people saying is, what could we do Or is there something we could do that would supercharge, make an immediate impact, both in reality and also to show commitment?
Right.
Yeah, and that's where we've, on the drainage side, for example, we have a laundry list of areas that we are focusing on, but every time we sit down to do one of these studies, it's gonna, because we're also with the staff that we have our bandwidth, to include, to engage a consultant. And so whether it is a creation of a true program, identifying and I hate to say that way because it sounds like we're running around just doing studies willy-nilly and, just simply reacting, but is, the opportunity there to develop a true program where the comprehensive study, and this is something that Mr. Williams has strongly encouraged us to do as well, and we are in the nascent stages of that on the stormwater side, to have a true program in place. But on the sanitary sewer side, I think Mr. Williams is wanting to add to the conversation.
I guess that's what I get for coming to these meetings.
Glad to have you, man.
A couple of things. One, drainage. Two, sewer. Drainage projects are ideal projects for bond packages, because we have to fund them through general fund, which is sales tax, property tax, and it's through competitive basis. Those dollars compete with police, fire, and everybody else for dollars. So it's hard to fund drainage projects. So any drainage project you can put on here, the better. Better for you, better for the city of Beaumont, the better for our taxpayers. Now the sewer has its own revenue fund. It's an enterprise fund that creates dollars because people pay a fee for their drainage. So there are a lot of dollars already available for sewer projects. Matter of fact, on next Tuesday's council meeting, 6 out of the 8 council agenda items are for either sewer or drainage projects. So we've identified many in this in CIP, and I wish staff would have gone over that CIP with you. And it's how many millions of dollars in the CIP for drainage projects? I forget, 100 million, more than that, something like that. And so y'all got to do a better job of communicating this to this board, that the city has dedicated dollars to millions and millions of dollars for sewer projects. Drainage projects are another challenge with this sometimes, but we have done that. Now, theoretically, could you put a drainage project on the bond? You could, but you already have funding for that.
Sewer project, you mean? You said drainage, but
Sewer. Yeah, theoretically, you could put one on a ballot, but you have dollars already to pay for those type projects. But for PR purposes, and you wanted to see that you're doing something, sure, you could. Is it typical? No, but you could.
Look, can I ask you this, Mr. Williams? And I don't want to sound ugly. I've been sitting there for a long time.
Okay.
So if, like everybody else, so if you have money for the sewer, are you spending it?
Yeah, as I said, 6 out of the 8 agenda items will be council dedicated money for projects to work on the sewer system next Tuesday.
And you know who needs to hear that? Channels 4, 6, and 12. You need to get that, because I'm finding out now, but it's like, it's deaf ears to the public in Beaumont. I don't hear about that.
Yeah, well, as I said, I said we need to do a better job of communicating that,
Yes.
Now, having the money, having the projects dedicated is one thing, getting the contractors and being able to get all the work done is another. You got to have the people to do the work, even if you have the money, and we only have so many contractors sometime in town. But, there's still some projects that are maybe not funded yet, and y'all staff tell me what's in the CIP, but I'm thinking $100, $200 million sewer projects are already funded and have identified funding for the city of Beaumont.
So when you go back to sewer, just a reminder, when you look at those projects that are in white on your spreadsheets, and I think we just may have had a roll-up. We talked briefly in the early meetings, there are a lot of sewer projects, but those are being paid for out of the sewer fund. Now, that wasn't as critical until these, that has come back up because of the floods and people seeing more backed up water. And that's why we want to come back to you tonight to talk about drainage. Does there need to be something, because the CIP is doing drainage, we set it aside at first. But given the recent weeks, it seems like maybe there needs to be something on there.
I think, that's just my thoughts, it has to be. And I don't know how much, but it has to be on there.
So, Mr. Williams, first off, thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming by. But I wanted to ask you, do you consider our drainage currently to be deficient? And if it is, then if we added more money to the bond, would that enhance, funds to improve that? Because I'm uncertain on kind of what your mindset is on that.
Yeah, the drainage system is deficient. Okay. It's when I got here, I identified it as one of the top priorities in town. If you look at any presentation I did back then, drainage sewer system was number one. So it definitely needs some work. But there has been a lot of things done to correct it. There's some dollars dedicated for that. Now, I didn't get the second part of your question. What was your second part? I'm sorry, Mike.
If we all agree that it needs to be part of the bond, would that enhance and potentially move the needle to where it would not be deficient any longer? Thank you.
On the drainage.
Drainage?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I made a recommendation on the other one, and I recommend you put a drainage project on this bond of some sort that's beneficial to the city of Beaumont. I would recommend it.
I mean, I know this was brought up pretty early on, and as the more I listen and the more that we talk about some things, and we're sitting there trying to rush, we got already looking for police, feasibility study, we're talking about drainage. A lot of people are going to want to know that drainage is actually going to go towards their neighborhood or their issue, and it seems to me that we're lacking a lot of information, and I'm not sure why not moving this thing just not years, but moving it to the next, to May or whatnot, and having all this information, not having to be just rushed inefficient, giving us time to go out there and look at some numbers and providing what it's sounding like everybody's wanting to provide to the community when we go to this open house versus I know when I'm going to this open house or talking to people about it, I don't have an understanding of it yet.
Molly, I know we talked a couple of weeks ago about coming up with some drainage projects that we could put on. I also know your last few weeks have you've been knee deep in alligators with the flooding, but
literally.
But kind of cutting to the chase here. I know we've had a lot of discussion, but
what's the rush for November?
It could wait for what I hear from what I hear from people is they're saying if you go to a bond package without addressing drainage, that some people in the community are going to feel like you weren't attuned to the immediate problems in Beaumont. I think that's the concern, at least.
I think we got to be very specific, because if we're not specific, the guy that's been waiting 10, 15 years to get his drainage done is going to go, well, this doesn't tell me if my neighborhood's going to get it. So I've been waiting 10 years. I'm voting against it. They didn't get to me in 10 years. So it can, just having money in there, it's got to be real specific. And we got to have some numbers.
Well,
Molly, are there any specific projects that would help citywide or help in critical neighborhoods that have bad drainage problems that we could do now?
And that's where I just want to be careful, because how specific do we get into it? It gets voted down, and now I can't spend any money to fix it. So that is my caveat going into it.
What is it again? I'm not understanding. What is your?
Let me jump in there. So here's the issue on drain. Here's the issue, and I was going to bring it up in a minute, but it's probably good that Molly brought it up now. If you put something on a bond and it fails, the city can't go do a CO. They can't do other kinds of debt for it for 3 years.
Really?
That's
wow. I didn't. I'm thinking.
That's because the legislature. That's because the legislature doesn't trust counties. So we've talked a little bit about that.
Wow.
I was going to close with that tonight. But so if you put something on there and it fails, then you're limited in how you can pay for it in the future. You can pay for it out of your regular budget, but you can't issue debt in some other way for 3 years. So right now, they're paying for a lot of drainage on CO projects. If you put a very specific project on and then it fails, then you can't pay for it out of COs for 3 years.
Can you put additional money into drainage without specifying an exact product?
So this is the question we've been asking. That's exactly the question we've been asking your bond counsel. Like, how do we get around that? There's got to be a way that we can create a fund that would go to provide some immediate relief for critical issues, but is general enough that it doesn't jeopardize this.
Right, because, I'm sorry, just as Lee stated, people talking about their products, but they know project, not products. If they know that additional money has been put into the drainage issue, then it creates a possibility that their project could come up much sooner. Or, as you said, with 6 or 8 deals being on the agenda forthcoming on Tuesday, that will help. But I'm just wondering, and hopefully you can get an answer, if we could just put additional dollars into drainage, to help the overall drainage in Beaumont, that would help our cause, because I know a lot of folks, I don't know if y'all, I get those calls. I get people wondering why you're doing this when I still have this problem.
I'm just going to be frank. The legislature in recent years has been very hard on cities and said we want to limit the abilities of cities to do things. The Attorney General's taken a very narrow view of what you can do. So cities have to be careful about that. I wish I had a clear answer for you. We've talked a lot to your bond counsel. I was hoping to have some very specific answers, anticipating that would come up tonight. I don't have them yet, but all I have from your bond counsel, we send him all of our projects and we're trying to craft some language. We weren't able to get that done, but he did say, like, you just got to be careful. I'm okay with you putting something on drainage, but it's going to be a very fine line to walk if you're afraid that that might fail. Now, I will say, if you look at what's likely to pass and fail, the number one issue in the city is infrastructure. Yeah. Number one is roads, number two is drainage. If you have a proposition that is roads and drainage and sidewalks, that's probably one of your safer propositions, but there is a danger attached.
So the question about what are we spending on the sanitary sewer side? So I'm looking at the proposed CIP starting with FY26. For FY26, we're scheduled to spend $26.7 million is what we're proposing. For FY27, we're looking at $25.9 million. And so those are projects that are spread out through the annual sewer system rehab, lift station repairs, and also adds in all of the other specific projects, whether it is two major lift station projects, and that's also in addition to the annual lift station. Could we increase those dollar figures for those line items that they're not specifically identifying a specific, trying to keep it vague enough that it becomes more of a, like we discussed for the sidewalks previously, of a sidewalk initiative, perhaps, that we boost that funding that way, or through the drainage projects where we can boost that funding that way. We have projects identified that we would immediately want to address in something like that. But then again, I just don't know enough about that. But I did want to make sure that I pointed out that over, for 5 years, we are scheduled to spend 50, 60. 75.6 million. Thank you. So if you could say that again.
And one of the things I want to add real quick is, from looking at our CIP, as we just mentioned, 75.6 million, that's sewer related. It has a different funding sources, revenue bonds. One of the things we can do throughout this process as we're educating the public is letting them know that although it's not on the bond, initiative. We're going to spend, based on our CIP, $76 million.
That would help sell the bond.
They would love to hear that.
Yeah, and we could do that through our education.
Absolutely. In fact, we can do that in open house. We've talked about that, June, you and I have, so.
My quick comment is if we heard, committee members, we heard tonight that our drainage is deficient. If it's deficient, this is what this is about. We need to fix it. So I personally think it's something we need to address. And then as someone said, I think June just said, we have to educate the public on what's going on with it. And it's a risk. Someone even said earlier, all this stuff is a risk. But the thing is that hopefully the neighborhoods that are deficient, because we're saying we're going to fix it, we'll get to it. We'll eventually fix that problem. But if there's no funds available, it's not going to get fixed. It's just my comment.
Thank you. All right. This is always risky, but this is what you're paying me for. Look, this is a tough one because there is this danger. If we make it too broad, well, maybe the Attorney General might come in and say, well, you can't put any drainage because you have this very broad one. I think we could craft something. Again, I was hoping to have language tonight. We don't have it. But I think we can try crafting something. I hear you, I think I hear all of you saying drainage is needed. A few people saying the danger is we're not clear about it. So it's 9 o'clock. I think what I would suggest is we go to the open house and we say the committee has talked a lot about drainage, recognize that drainage is a critical issue. Yeah. The city is addressing this in other ways through its sewer fund, with addressing a lot of these backwater brown issues, right? And the city is addressing drainage, but the committee is continuing to work on perhaps supercharging that or adding additional money if staff determines it can be well spent. And then we can ask some kind of question about how do you feel about drainage? Is there an amount? I mean, I think we plugged into that number just on our own, just $10 million as a placeholder to be something like the sidewalk program that you would have, we're going to spend $500,000 in study and then put $4.5 million into the sidewalks to get them up and going. And then the city has a plan to continue that every year to put a little money in that would supercharge it. It sounds like what I hear you saying is that maybe if you could get a supercharge fund that would just show progress and help the city make quicker progress on its plan. Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah, I think the citizens of Beaumont, and I can't speak to that. I don't go to council meetings. I don't know what's being said, but I don't think they're hearing that. And I could be wrong. I don't know. And people like numbers. You use the number 75 million. Put those numbers out there. That's real.
Here's another way to look at that. I mean, they just stated what they're committed to the next several years, $75+ million for the sewer. I think if the community comes to understand, we want to protect that level of investment to make sure it goes from the enterprise fund directly to that and it's not short-circuited anywhere. And that's why this bond is so critically important, that we can do all the other things that we need to do to advance this community forward by protecting that.
Good point.
With everybody understanding that we didn't forget, but $76 million will be going into drainage and clearing up something. We're getting additional information that we can share with people and have them understand that the city is still at work.
Yeah.
They understand that. And then we could talk about all the good points, be it the road extensions, be it a complex downtown, or whatever the case may be, to understand we got to move forward, but we've got to be able to take care of the infrastructure at the same time.
You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
One way the city can spend its money on drainage and things is if it's not spending it on some of these big capital projects.
That's right.
And we're also going to be looking at ways to enhance the existing drainage program. And we'll continue, we'll continue to work with your staff. I know Molly's been swamped in the last few weeks with just immediate issues, but we'll continue to work with her to try and get some details, and with your bond counsel to try and get some details.
Thank you.
Okay, then. Yeah, Karen. Okay, so really, we're ready to close it down. You guys have been fantastic. Look, we had a great presentation. Y'all had smart questions about it. We've had good discussion. I hope you feel good about it. The question is, are you comfortable then with this plan that we've discussed tonight, that we've put together, going forward to the open house?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we cut that off. Okay. 7, 8. I really want to make sure, does everybody feel like the process has been fair and you feel like we're in a good place?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
With the additional information, the manager stated that staff needs to provide.
Yes.
We can talk to the community about it.
We need good information. There needs to be some good public education.
Absolutely.
We've actually talked to the city manager in June about helping you imagine a public information campaign in the fall. So I know that's on the city manager's mind and June and Chris's minds. Feel good about where we are. Feel good about the process. All right, great. We're just gonna sum it up. Next steps. We're not gonna go in any kind of detail unless you want it. Here we are. We're moving toward July 22nd, which will be our last meeting. A reminder that the open house is coming up. So mark your calendars. You have been given, at your table should be a flyer. That is for your use so that you can make copies if you want. You can share with your friends. You can put it on Facebook. There's a QR code, okay, so that you can share that on your social media program or with your church or whatever it is. We need you all to remind people to get out. Relying on you guys. We'll be working with the city and the city's PI, the public information officer at the city, to put out lots of information. We're starting at July 4th to try and get a crowd, right? But you guys can help. So we will have the results. We will have everything that we've talked about tonight will be available in person on big boards. We'll have 4 or 5 members of our staff there. The city staff will be there to answer questions from folks. You guys are not required. We won't have a formal meeting. We'd love to see you if you want to come by and see what it's like. It will also be virtual, as we said, all that time. From the 4th to the 13th, right, Kara? So if we get good feedback from the community, that July 22nd meeting goes pretty fast, except that we do have a few big issues hanging out there still, right? Police station, what we're going to do, all the things that we've discussed tonight. We'll come back with drainage. We will come back with some recommendations on that beforehand. If we're able, we'll send you some updates on the open house before we get to the meeting so that you guys can come in knowing kind of what the results of that open house were and how the community felt. We may come up with one homework, but if we get a real clear consensus on the open house that, yeah, we want to spend $200 million on a police station, well, we may send a vote and let you vote at home on something like that.
That's awesome.
So I think that's it, guys. You made a lot of progress. I think we've got really the bones of a really strong bond sitting out there now. We'll come back and clean it up after the open house. Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Barton, you were right. You told us early on, once we get to putting this thing together, it's going to be a little bit longer. And I'd like to thank the city of Beaumont, June, Chris, Christina, and Miss Molly. I saw you on TV, Miss Molly. Yeah, you did a great job. And more importantly, everything that I do is from a team standpoint, and this is an amazing team. This advisory board committee is an amazing team that's looking out for the best interest for the people of Beaumont, and thank you so very much for that. And this meeting is adjourned.